Hey, what's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching the Underdog Best Ball Show. Joined today by Spread Astaire. Spread and I are going to go over the recent draft that happened this past week, and we're going to dive into Best Ball Mania draft because Best Ball Mania just announced Best Ball Mania 5, this one, and the payouts look pretty good. And Spread, what do you think overall on these payouts? And good to have you on the show again. It's been a while.
Hey, I'll be honest. I paid a lot more attention to the players and where I'm drafting them than the payouts. But from what I've read, I haven't seen one bad thing about the changes, right? And just so what I'm aware of is just simply advancing. You have a much better chance of turning a profit, even if you don't do well in the playoffs, which I saw that a lot of people were excited about, as well as the top prizes being more evenly distributed. The idea is the difference between fifth and first isn't as drastic this year. So I'm all in favor of that. It seems like it's great, but what I'm really excited to talk about is where we're going to draft these players, how we're going to build these teams. Because Simon, I told you yesterday, I did my first draft of the season. It was a lot of fun, but I really need to hammer out my later round strategies. I know who I want in the first couple of rounds, right? I know which stacks that I'm targeting. But this late round value is something that we're all kind of determining as a community right now. And I think we're going to see a lot of ADPs moving around based on how we draft this week.
Yeah, and I've been talking about macro strategy a lot on the past few shows that I've done. And I think what I'm noticing now, and it's kind of just a general macro theory with the NFL in general, is that the running back position has become, something to avoid. If you're raising your kids, putting them in football, or your coaching staffs maybe are telling your kids, you don't want to be the running back. You want to be the wide receiver, the quarterback, like just about any position but running back. Because you get grinded into the ground, you start your career on that rookie contract. By the time you get to the point where it's time to upgrade your contract, you're basically discarded. Like you don't get your upgrade in your contract. So you're basically, as a running back, you're setting yourself up to make as little money as possible potentially in the NFL, and you're going to be grinded into the ground in your first few seasons. And I think that is finally taking a toll on, the quality of running backs that are coming into the NFL. We've had a few good ones in the past couple years with Bijan and guys like that, Gibbs, that we've seen these last couple years. But I do think that we're starting to see it, at least in the draft class that we just had, where we're having less attractive running backs coming into the league, and they're getting drafted, obviously, later and later. But what do you think in general about the running back position in the NFL? And it's basically, it seems like it's a dinosaur right now, and that's creating a lot of necessity to draft these running backs early in the draft. But what do you think there, Spread, as far as ADP and fantasy drafts?
From my first kind of initial full rate, putting my toes in the water yesterday and checking the temperature, Simon, that's what really stood out to me, is where I felt that last year I could choose whoever I wanted in the first couple rounds, and I was happy grabbing some of those late round values. I mean, some of them didn't turn out, right? I watched shows last year. I was high on Dameon Pierce. Didn't work out too well. And he's the last round pick for you guys this year, if you're wondering where his ADP went. Miles Sanders, some of these players that didn't work out, but at least I think I felt more comfortable taking them. Maybe it's learning from last year, those swings and misses that I took, but it really feels like this year you're going to have to prioritize running back a lot more than I feel you did last year, because after you get out of the first 4 or 5 rounds, it's some slim pickings. So I'm going to be prioritizing running back, but I also think that, being able to identify them, we'll get more information on that. And maybe, that's why I think July is my sweet spot for drafting. Let's see who jumps out, right? Especially these 6th-round picks, maybe that we're not available of, or guy that was drafted in the last couple seasons and stashed that really makes a breakout in camp. I mean, look at James Cook for Buffalo and how bad he looked and how valuable he ended up being for this team. So Not only are we going to go over the rookies, let's look over some of these guys that were still on their rookie contracts that may not have had the usage the last couple of years, because you're going to need that unless you go all in on running back early. It gets really bleak there towards the end, but finding that late round value might be the difference.
Yeah, and that late round value that Spread is talking about, we were talking about this last night. When you get in those later rounds, normally we'd have like a handful of running backs to choose from, but it seems this year, at least at this stage in the season, we're at April, the end of April, going into May right now. So there could be some guys that pop up that we're not thinking about or we're not looking at. Basically, when preseason, all that festivities start up and training camp and everything, we start to get a better idea of the players that are showing up in camp and that are making an impact and potential argument for themselves being on the roster. So we're really a little bit of ways from all that going down. We get the NFL schedule coming up soon, so that's going to be our next big piece of information. But once we start getting into training camp, we'll have a better idea of maybe some of these late round guys that we could potentially focus on. But on first glance, where we stand right now, Spread and I both noticed that when you get to those later rounds, if you're not shored up on your running back situation, then you're going to be in a little bit of trouble as far as your depth. And it's easy to get depth on wide receivers, and wide receivers has been, like a trendy position, and especially lately in fantasy football, because everybody wants to go zero RB. And even with everybody kind of pivoting towards zero RB, they are still a lot of wide receiver options as you get later on in the draft. But running backs are very thin, and it's almost for me, it's kind of become a goal of mine to try to draft running backs early this season, at least from the information that I have so far. Spread, what are your thoughts on the couple drafts that you've done? Have you kind of noticed the same thing, where it makes a lot of sense to try to get these guys, like in the first, at least one running back in the first couple rounds?
Yeah, and that's what I'm doing. I'm prioritizing running back, and I think it's tough. So if I'm in the top 5, top 6, I still like the receivers a little better. But if I'm drafting in the back half of the draft, if I'm in the top 6, I'm going to go one wide receiver, one running back, because I like at the very top, I like the wide receivers better. Unless you get the number 1 overall pick with McCaffrey, right? But 2 through 6, 2 through 7, I'm going 1-1. If I get later than that, I'm taking the 2 running backs right then, because I feel that I can find effective wide receivers easier in that quote unquote running back dead zone than I can find the running backs there. So because of that, it's kind of a shift in strategy last year, where I was really focused on wide receiver last year early and trying to get those elite players, and feeling a little more comfortable grabbing some of these running backs in the 3rd and 4th round. I've definitely moved them up my priority list and my wish list this year, because this is definitely a case of you snooze, you lose, because you're looking up in that 7th, 8th round, and you're going, oh, wow. Oh, wow. These are my choices, huh?
Yeah, definitely. And, we call it hero RB, where you draft one running back a little bit early and then maybe hold off on the position. But I'm even thinking, drafting 2 running backs in the first, like maybe 5, 6 rounds, and then trying to, like see where the draft takes you from there. Because there's a lot of these elite quarterbacks are going a little bit later this year. We got a lot of the tight ends. People are a little bit shy on tight ends this season. Like there was a few tight ends going in the first couple rounds last season and the season prior to that. But this year, I think it's like 4th round or something. You don't see your first tight end until you see Sam Laporta in like the 3rd or 4th round or something like that. So tight ends are cheaper, quarterbacks are cheaper, wide receivers are plentiful, and the running back position is scarce as far as elite running backs. And that has to do with that macro trend that I spoke about earlier, and also just general in NFL having these dual-headed backs and backfields and stuff like that. There are very few elite running backs, and where Spread said that he likes those elite receivers, I almost like focusing on McCaffrey. I like Bijan Robinson, and yeah, Brees Hall, total brain fart. But those three guys, like if I get in the top 6, top 7 picks in the draft, and I can end up with one of those guys, then I'm pretty happy this season. And we can find, or at least I can find faults with a lot of those elite wide receivers this season. I mean, Justin Jefferson, he's got a rookie throwing to him now, or potentially Sam Darnold. We got Jamar Chase, who has been kind of up and down these past few seasons. He hasn't been justifying his top 5 pick. And, you can find faults with everybody, like CD Lamb. He had a breakout season last year, but, you never know if it's going to revert to less volume or whatever. Probably not, but it's odd to kind of see him there in that top 5, his 4th or 5th year in. So, there's cases to be made for those elite running backs when you need to get a guy who's going to have a ton of volume at the running back position and maybe own the backfield, or at least have very little competition in that backfield. And I think those 3 guys that I mentioned are 3 key guys when it comes to running backs that I would not shy away from, like I would in years past.
Yeah, and that tight end is going to be interesting, right? Obviously, we were coming off the year where Kelsey was pretty close to would have been wide receiver 1, right? It was, and his production fell off a lot, and I can understand why people are shying away from him. And then Laporta, right, went from being our 15th round darling to the top tight end on the board, which is fine. And if you land on him there, you want to build a lion stack, that's fine. But obviously the value is gone. So we're going to be looking for some other guys to potentially make that breakout. And then, of course, we'll table this one for just a little bit, but potentially a rookie to come in and make an impact, regardless of maybe his unsure quarterback situation. So I think tight end is going to be fun this year. And the good part is you do not need to invest early. So if you do make a mistake, I think you're able to overcome it. Where I think last year you took Kelsey at 4, you had to really be perfect in order to advance, because the other people's top round picks, were just, your Tyreek Hills and your McCaffreys and the other guys that were going in that area just excelled so much that it was too much for most teams to overcome. So I think it's a little more fun this year because you have a greater margin for error. If you swing and miss on your first tight end, you have a much better chance of your tight end 2 or your tight end 3 still carrying the day for you.
Yeah. So we'll get into rookies here, but before we do that, make sure to hit that like button. Looking for about 20 likes to put out another team video. I'm going to put out the Atlanta Falcons sometime here soon in the next week or so. And if I get 20 likes on this video, I'll pick a team to do it on. I haven't decided who I want to do as the second team just yet, but as we're getting more and more information on, like the draft and everything like that, it's starting to shape out to be like a few interesting teams to focus in on that second video. Also hit subscribe on the YouTube channel at about 500 right now. I want to get to about 600 in the next month or so. So if you could hit subscribe on the YouTube channel, that would be great. And Spread, let's dive into some of these draft results here and talk about some of our favorite landing spots. I think ultimately Caleb Williams landed in the best overall situation that I've probably seen a rookie quarterback land in ages, right? He landed in a spot where he's loaded up with weapons. The team's been rebuilding for the past few years, and he ends up not only in Chicago, but he ends up with Rome Odunze, another weapon that was picked also in the top 10 of the draft this year. So you can't ask for a better spot than where Caleb Williams landed. And he is a value, in my opinion, as far as where his ADP currently is. He's getting drafted somewhere in the 9th round, I believe. We'll get into that when we get more into the draft. But yeah, Caleb Williams to me seems like not only a great landing spot, but it has the upside to outperform several of the quarterbacks getting drafted ahead of him. What are your thoughts there, Spread?
I want to be careful going too in. I know this is a fantasy show, But as a bettor, I like to see where I feel the fantasy implications of a certain team are skewing our overall perception of this team. And I know that we're looking at these weapons and we go, DJ Moore, right? And we go, Rome Odunze, right? Keenan Allen. This is going to be great. My concern, this team didn't address the offensive line. For a rookie quarterback, I think that's going to be hard. Now, I know that I think they're still going to be fine. And if you want to do a bear stack, I'm all in on you, especially because you can get Caleb later. But as for me, I'm not moving them up on my draft boards at all. My worry is, number one, is he going to have problems getting the time to get those guys open, and two, the inconsistency of just being a rookie, right? So when you're drafting, the good thing about it is you can get most bears as secondary stacks, right? Mm-hmm. You can start a first stack. So I would use them as their secondary stack, but I would try and grab them now because they're gonna go up the board, and I think that might be one of the mistakes that these guys are making, especially in a division where these defenses are pretty good, right? The Detroit Lions, I know that they've got a great offense and they put up big numbers, but one of the real reasons that team has turned things around is Aiden Hutchinson and the rest of that defensive line getting pressure on the opposing quarterbacks. And we know that Green Bay's always had a solid defense. Not to mention, we haven't seen the schedule yet. There's a good chance. What if they're playing 2 of their last 3 games? Their playoffs are all outdoors, right? If we got a Chicago, home game in Chicago and a Lambeau out there, if they're facing Detroit early, that could be one of the ones that really, I think, changes the Bears' value. Let's say they're in the last 2 weeks, they're in Minnesota and Detroit. Now it's a pretty good value, right? Let's say their last 2 weeks are in Chicago and Green Bay. Now I'm not sure as much as I'm going to want them going into the playoffs, right? I mean, a week 14 or a week 17 matchup against Detroit would be crucial, right? Either in that first round of the playoffs or, potentially the finals. But if they're outdoors during those weeks. So I'm not rising the Bears up on my board as much as other people are.
Yeah, and one thing that Spread just mentioned there too is, as far as schedule, we're still waiting on the exact dates and schedule to come out. So we're still waiting for the NFL schedule to come out. It comes out in like May, so we're still a few weeks away from that. So if you're drafting now an underdog, draft a few to get an idea of where ADP is, if you believe that there's some sort of value there, but don't go overboard until the actual schedule comes out, because you don't want to screw yourself with picking a couple quarterbacks that you own heavy ownership, heavy exposure to, and they end up having the same bye week if you're going with a 2 quarterback strategy or something like that. So make sure to, just kind of temper your drafting for now. Sign up for an Underdog account using the promo code SEEK, SEEK, and they're going to match you up to $100 on your first deposit. Helps us out too. Don't ask for too much with producing this show regularly. Just likes, subscribes, and Underdog signups. If you haven't signed up for it yet, they'll match you $100. And basically, it's $25 to enter the Best Ball Mania contest. So if you pay $100 of your own money, that's 4 entries, and then you get 4 free entries with a $100 match from Underdog. So make sure to do that. And like I said, the schedule is going to be hugely important. We're waiting until next month for that. That's when I'll start going a little bit more heavy on the drafting to try to, start building a portfolio of these early teams where I might, start see some value before these guys start creeping up the creeping up the rankings. But yeah, Spread. So if we're looking at the second guy here on the list, these are in no particular order, by the way. These are just guys that landed in good landing spots. I got Jaden Daniels on Washington, and he lands in a spot similar to Caleb, where he's got weapons there already. He's got Terry McLaurin, and then obviously Jahan Dotson on top of Austin Eckler. So he comes into a pretty favorable landing spot as far as having weapons. The team has not done well. But Sam Howell last season, I believe he led the league in passing yards, or he was up in that top 5, top 10 in passing yards, although there was a lot of interceptions mixed in there too. But still, like was a favorable passing situation because they were having to pass a lot. We see a new coaching regime coming in there this year, and so we're not sure exactly how things are going to go. But Spread, what's your thoughts here on the landing spot for Jaden Daniels?
It seems to be a good spot. My main concern is it's almost like the Bears, the division and the line. The division and the line are our main concerns. Of course, Philadelphia's had one of the most fearsome defensive lines for a while. The New York Giants, as bad as they've been overall as a team, defense has been all right. I think their problems have been on the offensive side of the ball. And of course, we know that the Dallas Cowboys like to get out of the quarterback and maybe have the most impactful defensive player in the league when it comes to disrupting a passing game in Micah Parsons. So my concern is that the line isn't ready. However, I like Jaden Daniels a lot this year as your secondary QB. I think he's going to spike week a lot. His ability to use his legs, the fact that he's got excellent weapons already, so he's not going to be facing some of the drop-off, right? I mean, we joked about some of these guys. Joe Burrow maybe had a drop-off his first year in the NFL after having that great receiving class at LSU. So I like Daniels a lot as a secondary piece. I don't want him to be my first stack. I wouldn't try and get too cute there because I do worry about the division, and I'll be interested to see another one. Let's wait for that schedule, right? It would suck, for New York and Philadelphia to end the year for him. I'd much rather have him be out in Dallas or maybe, playing down in Washington for his final games. But no, I like Jaden Daniels a lot, especially from a fantasy perspective, because just that run upside. That's the one thing I think that they get wrong on fantasy. I think running quarterbacks are so overpowered from the fantasy perspective, where, Anthony Richardson's being ranked higher than Joe Burrow, right? But like, who would you rather have on your favorite team, right? So, I like Jaden Daniels a lot, though.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels ends up in a decent spot. Moving on to a different position, we'll move on to Marvin Harrison of the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously lands in a good spot. We've seen Kyler Murray support a decent fantasy performance out of DeAndre Hopkins in the past. And I think Marquise Brown was even looking good before he got hurt or Kyler got hurt a couple years ago. But Kyler Murray, perfectly capable of supporting a strong fantasy performance out of a wide receiver. Marvin Harrison obviously has that explosive upside on top of it, ends up in Arizona. And I think that's probably the best spot for one of those top ranked wide receivers of this class. What are your thoughts here on Marvin Harrison? I think it kind of goes without saying, Spread, but do you have any other insight on that?
Yeah, it's got to be a great spot. And we talked about where these teams could be playing in the playoffs. With Arizona, we don't have to worry about as much, right? Maybe a trip to Seattle. But even then, I don't know how bad that would be compared to having to go to like Lambeau or New England there in that last week. But most likely you'll be playing out here in San Francisco. It's still beautiful in December. Arizona is going to be nice year round. And of course, the Rams there. And I think that Kyler Murray is going to get him a ball. I think that they see this Larry Fitzgerald 2.0, and I think it's hard to not agree with that comp. The guy he's physically gifted, and he runs perfect routes. I mean, what more can you want, So I think it's a great spot for Marvin Harrison Jr. He's very high on draft boards, but I think that ADP is correct.
Yeah, right now I see Marvin Harrison at wide receiver 10. He's coming off the board as the 13th, 14th pick. So he's very high up there, a couple picks into the second round. For me, that's a little bit expensive for a rookie, but like Spread said, he's just got all the upside in the world with the spot that he landed in. The problem is, I think right now is he's priced for maybe perfection, depending on what we see out of him this season. But I wouldn't avoid him, but I'm probably not going to go too heavy on him at that price unless we see him start to come down a bit. But like I said, with those other rookies, I was hoping that one of those guys would land in a decent spot like the Chargers or something like that. But we got the Giants and we got the Bears, and neither of those spots is ideal for a rookie quarterback, and like so Marvin Harrison like pulls away from those other guys just based on landing spot alone for sure. J.J. McCarthy is another guy on the list. The quarterback went to Minnesota. Minnesota traded up, I believe, to get J.J. McCarthy, and he finds himself in an excellent situation with Justin Jefferson to throw to. Just overall, Minnesota pass happy offense in general, and we've seen it in the past able to support quarterback performances out of Kirk Cousins. And they also got Jordan Addison, obviously, to throw to as well. And we're going to have, once he's healthy, TJ Hawkinson as well. So J.J. McCarthy ends up in a favorable spot. The only knock on him is he doesn't have a ton of experience in, pass-heavy offenses. But what are your thoughts there, Spread?
Is it fair to say I really have no idea what to make of him as a prospect?
Yeah.
I was really surprised to see him shooting up the draft boards. I know we have the measurables, and I know that he played with the championship team, but off the top of my head I've watched college football for 40 years. I mean, how many guys have we seen that are just so elite in college and then just can't get it done at the pro level? And I know that they do believe he has the intangibles, but that's asking a lot. So what are the advantages? Number one, came from a pro head coach who was a former quarterback in the NFL. So I would argue, and people might disagree, but he got basically the best possible coaching at the college level, right? You maybe throw out Saban or a couple of these other guys, but he was coached as well as he could be. So we got to think that he's been developed properly. Two, he played in a pro offense. It's not going to be a big deal for him to get under center, run some of those play actions at the NFL. You need at the NFL to keep those linebackers heavy. And number three, you come into a situation where we've seen this before. When you have an elite receiver that's always open, makes you look a lot better as a quarterback, right? It's a lot easier to throw to a guy that's always open, especially if you're having problems processing the rush. And you got guys that can make contested catches, right? Addison's going to be open a lot. I know that Hawkinson's probably not going to start the year with the team, right? Which is why he's so low on the board, because he had the potential, I would say, to be right up there with Laporta. If we were going to get a full season from him, I would have actually ranked them the same. But if you can absorb that early time, you get to that crunch time, Hawkinson's going to be a guy that can make contested catches as well. These are all huge for a rookie quarterback. So I would say for McCarthy, I'm not really sure if he has it, but this is a situation to prove that he does. This isn't going to be a Bryce Young situation where we say, well, what could the guy really have done, right? He had no wide receivers. He had no time to throw. It's not going to be like that at all. There are some questions about the Minnesota O-line, but let's be honest, there's questions about every single offensive line in football, right? When I'm following along on the draft, right, on my little draft tracker app, every single team needed O-line and cornerback. Every single team, it listed as one of the needs. So McCarthy, I'm kind of taking a mulligan here. If I fall into it, like if I grab Jefferson early, who's a player I love. I think it's going to be like Devontae Adams, right? When Devontae Adams, who's throwing him the ball? It doesn't matter. He's still a fantasy stud, right? And I think Jefferson's going to be the same way. I think Jefferson's being a little undervalued. So if I have an opportunity to get him early, I'm fine going with the McCarthy stack. Now, if I were to do that, Simon, should I be concerned that he doesn't play for 3 or 4 weeks? And then I'm sitting on that goose egg and I get too big of a hole, because I would think that most likely Darnold's going to start week 1, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably going to trend that way, based on what we've heard on McCarthy in his college career, not having all that much experience with throwing. They were more, like leaning run heavy. But, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up starting at the beginning of the season. But I don't know what was promised to Darnold or if there's any promises there. But yeah, I mean, Darnold shouldn't be too tough to eventually beat. But yeah, whether it's at the beginning of the season, right?
Because if you're just sitting there with that 0 and that hole right off the bat, which is why the secondary Viking, it's still tough, because you go Jefferson first. First thing I want to do is correlate them. I don't know if that correlation is going to be as good as, say, correlating Marvin Harrison with Kyler, where other than injury, I'm getting the correlation for the whole season.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing I will say with J.J. McCarthy, too, he's the number 25, or actually the number 27 quarterback off the board. Underdog ADP is 187.7. So you're really not. I mean, he's a QB3 if you're drafting him, or if you're desperate and you're in a bad spot with your quarterback situation. He's going right after Justin Fields. I almost, I think I would take Justin Fields before JJ McCarthy, like just because of the rushing upside, obviously. But yeah, JJ McCarthy seems like more of a pocket passer, which, there's nothing wrong with that, but he's just not going to get you that upside in fantasy. So, if you're in that situation and you're staring at Justin Fields versus JJ McCarthy, you're in a tough spot with your quarterback situation. Not knowing if JJ McCarthy is going to be the starter at the beginning of the season, I'd probably lean Fields in that situation for sure.
All right. Yeah. And that'll be fun. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we're looking at the next guy, Brian Thomas, I thought landed in a good spot with Jacksonville.
Great spot.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, he's got a great quarterback. They just lost Calvin Ridley. And they have all sorts of, like things going for them as far as, they kind of had a down season last year. So their value is, they're being undervalued, I feel, right now. Spread, what are your thoughts on this landing spot? And just give your general thoughts on the spot for him.
I think it's fantastic. And I think that Calvin Ridley is an excellent player who didn't fit into that Jacksonville scheme. I think he's much better in the slot, and they're having him run routes as a number one. Now I think he comes into a situation where he's not going to be expected to do it all and get the focus of the defense like a Marvin Harrison will. And I put him in my draft yesterday. Simon, I built a Jacksonville stack, and I was very happy to have him. And you'll see that comes out easy because I believe it's Christian Kirk, but they're sitting right there. So if you're drafting on the turn like I was yesterday, you can build the Jacksonville stack fairly easily. And I think that's going to be a popular stack for people. With Lawrence, not necessarily, with the lack of rushing upside, he's not top. So you can get that stack as a secondary stack after really loading up your team with studs early. I'm high on Jacksonville this year, and I expect Lawrence to continue to improve. Great spot for him. I think that he's happy, and I think the team's happy that he fell to him, because I know they traded back and they were still able to get him. So they have to be happy they were able to pull that off.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, great landing spot for him. Competition for passing targets are Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis, as well as Evan Ingram. And, obviously to an extent, Travis Etienne. But yeah, Brian Thomas, depending on how Gabe Davis does in this offense, Brian Thomas could be the wide receiver too before, midway through the season or something. So good spot for him. Got an elite. Well, he hasn't really shown elite too much in the NFL, but he's on the brink with Trevor Lawrence. I do like Trevor Lawrence a lot. I do think that last year there were some sync issues with Calvin Ridley, and I think that affected Trevor Lawrence a little bit too much. And I think that just losing an elite receiver like that might actually be a good thing for Trevor Lawrence this season, having like three non-intimidating, I guess you could say, wide receivers to throw to, but three really good weapons. And Christian Kirk has shown a lot of upside in the past. We've seen Gabe Davis, obviously, with his upside with Buffalo, but there's still question marks there. So Brian Thomas has a good chance to make a good spot for him on this offense.
Yes, he does. I'm pretty excited about the Jacksonville stack I built yesterday. So
yeah.
Now it's funny because I'll be building these stacks, Simon, and I'm not going to overdo it. Like you said, we're just putting our toes in the water, kind of getting a chance. So when the schedule comes out, we have a better idea. But yeah. I think I'm going to be targeting Jacksonville stacks and just rooting for them to just get a great last 3 weeks, right? Like, let's play a couple home games and let's travel to Indy. That would be ideal for me.
Yeah, I like that strategy. And, you look at like how Tennessee improved their team, like in free agency, and like I can't really remember what they picked in the draft, if they picked any impact players, but like Tennessee did a pretty good job in free agency. At least they picked up Calvin Ridley, so they have weapons to compete.
Did you see this about Tennessee's draft?
No. What do you
So
got?
it didn't really make a big deal to me, but I was listening to some content yesterday, and supposedly they drafted a guy to drinking problem. And Simon, I know you spent some time out there, and they're basically saying Nashville's a lot closer to Las Vegas or New Orleans than people give it credit for. There was a lot of concerns around that draft pick and how that organization is going. But he is an offensive tackle. I don't know how much that affects us in fantasy, but I didn't know any of that stuff. I didn't know that the guy had issues with the DUI like the week before the draft, and then teams took him off their board, and Tennessee took him pretty high anyways. So I don't know what's going on there in Tennessee. And I think that the Will Levis stacks or a Tennessee stacks really late could be fun. But I mean, that is the epitome of boomer bust, Simon. Right. I mean, that's just going to the craps and just rolling the dice, because it's about the purest gamble you can get. I would say Tennessee is going to be one of the purest gambles when it comes to this year's best ball season. And it's going to be one of those ones where you get it right or get it wrong. It could mean a lot between your advance rates being profitable or non-profitable. Because if you take a stand that you like Tennessee and they're good, you're going to get so much value on them. You should be advancing a lot. If you take a stand on Tennessee and you like them, and it turns out that they're not good at all, and they're moving on from Levis at the end of the year, and the new coach and the new organization just can't get it done, which is quite possible, right? I mean, they're the big overall here, right? They're losing Derrick Henry, right. Older receivers. I know they have DeAndre Hopkins, and so.
Yeah, I mean, Will Levis, he's in a pretty good spot. Like if that linesman ends up being good, and then he's got Hopkins and he's got Ridley to throw to, like you said, Henry's gone, so they're going to need to rely on his arm more than they would have without him. But they did pick up Tony Pollard, which is good. So like in free agency, I would say Tennessee did pretty good job in free agency as far as stacking up their offense, setting up Will Levis for some success here. It's just a matter of if he can get everything together. And what you were saying about, like the bar scene in Nashville is like, it's like the bridal shower capital of the country, pretty much, because it's like you always see these bridal showers. They're always getting on these. They got these booze buses or whatever, where they're riding around on like this bicycle powered bus and just drinking, and it's all sorts of stuff like that. Like it's very alcohol friendly city to be in. So yeah, if he's got a drinking problem, it's probably not the best spot for him. But yeah, I mean, Levis is set up like Spread said. It'd be a fun little stack to do late in these drafts, especially with the weapons that he has, and you're going to get it cheap, because those guys are all relatively cheap. So Tennessee is going to be a cheap and fun stack to have. They're going to be in a lot of shootouts probably too, because they're facing off against the Texans and they're facing off against Jacksonville. So it's becoming more of an offensive-minded division, I think. All right, Spread. Next up, we got Xavier Worthy. He landed in a great spot with Kansas City, probably one of the better spots that one of these wide receivers could have landed. And he was in the perfect situation because he was one of those guys that was projected to get drafted towards the end of the first round. And he landed on one of those teams that would have been a perfect setup. Buffalo would have been another great one, but he ends up on Kansas City, fastest combine 40-yard time ever, and just lands in a great spot with Patrick Mahomes. What are your thoughts here on Xavier Worthy?
I wouldn't be shocked if he has a slow start. If you're going to draft him, you really got to make sure you have something to get you through those early weeks. We saw that with Rashee Rice last year, right? A player who shot up the draft boards, and rightfully so, as he showed it so much. And there's potential for Rice to miss some games, but still, being a rookie and coming into that offense, I think is tough. But I think he's a great pick, because I think he's going to be really valuable in those late weeks and during the playoffs. So boy, if you're his agent or his family, you have to be so happy at where he landed with the chance to make such an impact in a great offense, right? Because if he gets passed over there, right, he might have to go to one of the worst teams in the league if he gets drafted early in the second round, because there's no way he was going to get past, the top 15 picks in the second round. So great for him. And he's someone I'm definitely looking at, but I'm trying to do it when my wide receivers already stacked and I can absorb some of the bad weeks from him, because he's definitely going to be a boom or bust guy. And I think his potential is not going to show out till the end of the season. If you have him and you don't get much out of him the first 5 weeks, I don't think I would be ready to panic yet.
Yeah, and he's a guy too that has shot up in ADP. He's currently at 72 ADP on Underdog. Wasn't even on really the radar until the combine performance. And he's a guy that he's not like a John Ross who did nothing in college and then he had a fast combine, ended up luck boxing into the first round. With James Worthy or Xavier Worthy, he is a guy that has had success in college. He's shown that he is, qualified to be in that first round, especially with that speed factor. But yeah, Xavier Worthy is one of those speedy guys that you can look at differently than we would in the past. That maybe like a Henry Ruggs or like a John Ross or something.
Yeah, and we'll see. I think Ruggs was actually on his way to having a pretty good career before he derailed himself. So, great opportunity, great team, and you pair him with Hollywood Brown. That's going to be a fast team. Also opens some things up for Kelsey under the middle. So maybe after underperforming against his ADP last year, because of Xavier Worthy, could cause Kelsey to overperform, as the middle of the field should be much more wide open when you have to take into account both Brown and then Worthy there going deep.
Yeah, they're going to have an interesting offense this year, and I feel a lot better about the Chiefs. The funny thing is, I feel a lot better about the Chiefs this year, obviously, than last year. And as far as Patrick Mahomes, I get a look at where his ADP is so far. But from when I last looked, his ADP was a value versus last year, which is very interesting. He's going as the fourth quarterback off the board. Current ADP is 49. I think that's a pretty good deal on Patrick Mahomes, given the makeup of the offense this year and the new speedy weapons that are coming in. He's got like a couple of Tyreek Lights there in Brown and Worthy right now as far as speed. So that'll be interesting to see how that all gels together.
Yeah, if we had over under, I think he's going to be over on most of his statistics compared to last year. So obviously the team went with a more defensive route. They jettisoned Tyreek Hill. They put those resources into the defense. It paid off for them. But now getting some value style contracts, right, with the first round pick and Hollywood Brown, didn't cost them too much. They're going to be back on track. So I think they're going to be a more balanced team this year. And I think Mahomes will outperform his ADP.
Yep. Perfect spot. Perfect year for the Chiefs this year, having like a excess of wide receivers in this draft and having plenty of good picks falling to them in that late first round. So it couldn't have been a better situation for the Chiefs as far as their wide receiver needs this year. So Keon Coleman is another guy that landed in a good spot. He landed on Buffalo. He was dropping an ADP leading into the draft. There was talk about him initially in this offseason, but then it kind of tempered. I guess he didn't perform too well at the combine. There was something that was dropping him, and he had fallen off a lot of radars, but then he comes back with this Buffalo pick. I believe that was I think they traded out of the first round, and that was a second round pick. But Keon Coleman, regardless, ends up in a good spot with Buffalo. And he's got very little target competition there. He's got Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir. But what are your thoughts here on Keon Coleman's spread?
Yeah. So crazy how these little narratives can change our perspective. So do you know what caused him to fall? That he talked about liking McDonald's and Waffle House. So they were worried about his diet. And it's so, gone are the days of Kenny Stabler, right? Studying the playbook by the lights of the jukebox, just drinking all night before the game. They definitely take their nutrition seriously. I don't think that, because he ordered, went viral that he was ordering hot and spicy and chicken nuggets and Oreo McFlurries before the game. I'm very interested. Let's throw that out. I can go two ways with this pick. Number one, supposedly the Bills let Allen scout all the receivers and asked him who he wanted. And he said, I want Keon Coleman. And to me, that makes sense because he's going to be a bigger guy and it gives him an opportunity to throw those 50-50 balls, but they end up being 80-20 because your guys have an advantage. But the ability to throw into coverage, I think, was something that Allen was looking for here. The concern is, however, is he going to be able to run the route of a number one guy? It seems like he fits better as a number two or number three. If they put him in that X position, I'm not sure how well he's going to do. So I've heard arguments for him and against him just from a schematic fit. Let's throw the McDonald's out on whether or not he's going to be effective. But the fact that Allen went to bat for this guy, Allen seems to like him a lot, makes me think that he's going to feed him. And I think I'm a little higher on him than other people are. So let's continue to let all these negative stories come out about how he's not fit to be a number one and his route tree isn't impressive. And hopefully Allen will force feed him and we can get him above ADP as well.
Just to kind of reinforce what you said, Buffalo actually traded their pick to the Chiefs. So they had an opportunity to draft Worthy, and they chose not to, and then instead traded their pick to the Chiefs, and they ended up with Keon here. So yeah, very interesting notes on that, and that he's in a really good spot. So we'll see what happens there. Lad McConkey ends up in a great spot as the Chargers are very lacking in weapons this year. They got Joshua Palmer and they have Quentin Johnson, who they drafted last year. He didn't really show too much in his rookie season. And I think other than that, they're pretty barren at the receiver position. And Lad McConkey comes on this team and has himself an instant good spot as far as opportunity for targets. But what do you think there, Spread?
To me, Xavier Worthy would be number two. Lad McConkey, number one in best position for him to land for fantasy football. Because he's going to jump in and he's going to get all those targets right off the bat. He's got an elite quarterback throwing to him. And as long as he shows that he can get open and do what he did in college, the targets are going to be there. You got to be happy if you're him, his agent, his family at where you landed. You're in beautiful Los Angeles. You got a great coach, a great quarterback, and you're going to be getting all the work. I expect him. He's going to be a guy that we're going to target now, Simon, because when we're doing these shows in July, August, he's going to be about 30 or 40 ADP higher. I think he's just going to continue to go up the draft boards unless for some reason he were to get an injury during training camp or OTAs.
Yeah, and he's a guy that I was talking about on the show with Meg. Meg brought him up, and we were joking about like, how do you not draft a guy named Lad McConkey, and then he ends up ending on like landing on the perfect landing spot. So yeah, his ADP, I'll get a look at it here. Let's see where he's going now. I see him at 91.4 ADP on Underdog. So he's definitely climbed, but I think that's still a range where I would draft him. I think that he's got a very significant situation that is going to benefit him, and I do think that he's still draftable at this big jump in ADP. So definitely like Lad McConkey there. And keep in mind too, with these jumps in ADP, they really don't matter because when you're in Best Ball Mania, it's starting completely from scratch. You're not having to worry about missing out on value earlier on in the season or anything like that. It's starting from here. Like Lad McConkey is starting fresh at this 91 ADP. So you're not worried about value having missed value right now. So you still have plenty of opportunity to draft guys like this before they potentially shoot up even more. If he shot up 30 spots or something. Spread, were you talking about McConkey shooting up 30 spots?
I think he could. I think him and Worthy are going to be the two highest risers of all the rookie receivers.
Yeah, exactly. So still plenty of upside potential there, even with them having had that shoot up right before the Best Ball Mania started. So Adonai Mitchell, I thought he landed in a pretty good spot too with Indy. Not as good as some of those other guys, but he's a guy that I was thinking would land on a team like Kansas City or Buffalo. He ends up on Indy. He's got some competition there for targets, obviously, but I think overall, he's going to be in a good spot with an exciting young quarterback. And the main obvious target competition is Michael Pittman. They also got Josh Downs, but Adonai Mitchell should fall in at that wide receiver 3. And they don't really have too much going on at the tight end position. But what are your thoughts here on Mitchell?
So from a fantasy perspective, I don't know if this was the best landing spot for him for rookie performance for this year's Best Ball Mania. However, I do think it's a great landing spot for his career overall. We know that Shane Steichen is an excellent coach, and I think that not only is he going to get opportunities, but he's going to get developed properly. But there are concerns. You did talk about him being a number 3 option, right? We just talked about a couple wide receivers. Even Keon Coleman could be a top option there for the Buffalo Bills. He's going to be at number 3. And also, I know that AR is going to be a great fantasy quarterback. How much is that going to be on the strength of his legs? We still are not sure that he's going to be able to slice and dice these NFL defenses the way that he has through the air. And of course, that's what Mitchell would need to be a top performer. So while I do think he's going to get developed correctly, I expect his routes to be run much better. I think he's going to learn the NFL quickly. I don't know how much of a impact he's going to have as a rookie due to the fact that he is low on the depth chart, and I'm not necessarily convinced on the guy getting him the ball. So I think that he's someone that his ADP is going to stay around the same, right? We talked about a couple of these other guys. Grab them now, and you're going to get, CLV is what we say in the betting world, but right, you're going to get ADP, CLV, whatever you want to term it. I think Mitchell will probably be around where he's at the whole time. I can't see him flying up the draft boards unless one of the top receivers in Indy gets injured. And if Pittman were to tear an ACL in camp, all of a sudden he's going to become really attractive. But assuming that team stays healthy, I think that where he's placed is about right. If you have a Colt stack, go ahead and grab him, but I'm not going out of my way to get him.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. And he has risen to the point where he is only like one slot behind Ladd McConkey, who is in infinitely better spot. So given the comparison there in the context, I would probably, you landed in a good spot, but like Spread said, there's too many question marks there, and I would tend to avoid him at this high price personally. But I do think that real football wise, he landed in a good spot. And there's a lot of question marks with Anthony Richardson. So keep in mind with him, he was projected to go maybe late first round last year up until the combine. He blew everybody away at the combine and ended up shooting up to the 4th overall pick, I believe, by Indy last year. And he ended up on fire in the games that he played, but his playing style had him on the bench with injuries throughout most of the season last year. And then, of course, he
didn't even finish a game last year, did he? Maybe finished one?
I don't think so. Yeah. I don't think so. Because there was a few times where I was rostering him, and he ended up starting the game on fire, and I thought oh my God, this is gonna be a huge payout. And then he ended up getting hurt in the second quarter or the third quarter of the game and missing the rest of the game. So he has yet to finish a game, like Spread said. At least I think that's the case. So
might have been one. He was a
Yeah.
full fade for me last season, Simon. I did not have him on my draft board at all. I took him off, and those first 3-4 weeks, Simon, I go, boy, did I make a mistake here? And I didn't actually think he was going to be injured. I was just worried about how I felt like he was a project and would take us 2 or 3 seasons to really see him be able to carve up those offenses. And I would missing that year, I think, is really tough because he was already behind on the development, and he's in a great spot working with Steichen. However, boy, they got to get the most out of this rookie contract with him because I don't know if he's going to be a guy who's going to be able to carry a team also carrying a $40 million or that percentage of the salary cap there. So you got to really hope that he stays healthy and get developed. But for those reasons, I'm not too high on Mitchell. If I end up with a Colt stack, I'm fine. And I'm sure I'll have a couple Colt stacks, but that's not a team that I'm going out of my way to stack. And these aren't players that I'm happy just grabbing as best player available to augment my other stacks.
Yeah, I agree with that. And he's an exciting player to watch, but he's basically starting over as a rookie again this year with all the lack of experience that he had due to injuries and missing games last year. So exciting player, but we'll have to see. The jury's still out on long-term success in the NFL with that guy. Trey Benson is the next one I have on this list here, and he landed in a great spot in Arizona. Obviously, James Conner defies expectations every year, but now he ends up having some competition in the backfield with Trey Benson. I think that's probably about as good a spot as one of these, high upside potential rookies could have ended up on as far as, a landing spot. But what are your thoughts here on Trey Benson, and what kind of impact do you think he's going to make in his rookie season?
A sneaky play here, Simon, that I'm going to be trying to get involved in because we talked about James Conner, but I've never really been impressed with him as a player. Every time I draft him, I'm drafted based off the usage. And I think that Benson's got a great chance to steal some of that usage, especially as the season progresses. So if you do have him and he's giving you some duds to start the year, I wouldn't be too worried about it. I definitely think he's a player that's going to come into his own. And I think he's being overlooked because Arizona's being overlooked. That's one of the toughest divisions in football. And they have not really shown a lot to think that they should be mentioned up there with the Rams, the 49ers, and the Seahawks. But I think they're going to be sneaky good. And I like him a lot, especially as a late round flyer. And, I talked about earlier, Mitchell's a player I only want if I'm correlating. I'm actually fine grabbing him, even if I don't have the correlation there. Because I think that he could end up being fairly productive towards the end of the season. And we talked about how running back's tough, right? So this is the type of guys we're going to have to take stands on. So I like him a lot.
Yeah, and he's going, current ADP is 100 versus 82 for James Conner, just to put it in a little bit of perspective there. I think that gap closes throughout this offseason. I think that Connor's age is going to catch up with him, and he's just had some injuries in the past. He's a guy that's overcome cancer and all this kind of stuff. So he's got like a lot of he's been doing a lot of recovering throughout his career, and it might catch up to him this season. But he's got Trey Benson lurking in the background there as probably the RB2 on that team with that Arizona Cardinals pick. So let's see. The other guy I wanted to mention as far as tight ends for landing spots that I like, and then Spread has another one that he'd like to add in there, is Jatavian Sanders. He ended up on Carolina. He's a guy that Steve Shoup was talking about when he was a guest on the show a couple weeks ago, and he really liked Jatavian Sanders, and I think that Steve has a really good read on potential breakout players from the draft and coming into the NFL. He did really well with projecting the tight ends last year and building his macro strategy around targeting those rookie tight ends. And he liked Jatavian Sanders, and he ends up on Carolina. So Carolina is a team that was lacking in targets. They got Adam Thielen. They kind of busted on the draft with their wide receiver pick. Let's take a look and see which one they picked here. They ended up going with Xavier Leggett. I'll get your opinion on Xavier there, Spread, and give me your thoughts on Jatavian Sanders.
I'm surprised you put this one in the top landing spots here, because I would say the main concern around him is the team that he's on. Right now, and we know things can change quickly in the NFL, because I was on board with the Bengals being the worst organization up until 2 or 3 years ago. But Carolina is definitely head and shoulders considered to be the worst run organization in the NFL. And when things are going bad, people love to pile on. And they had so many holes this year that we really have to be concerned. Is this team going to be behind so much? I'm not sure what to make of Bryce Young. How much was that him just not being an NFL caliber player? And how much was it just a poor line, and Adam Thielen being your number one receiver wasn't good to happen in 2023. But my concern for him is just that the Carolina Panthers are just absolutely terrible again this year. And therefore, he's just not getting the opportunities that he needs as this team continues to go 3 and out and can't put together consistent drives.
I think one of the things that I like about Sanders is just all that stuff that you mentioned with Bryce last year. And this gives him a big target, like kind of a safety blanket that he could potentially target. Athletic guy, big, gives him an opportunity to have a safety valve there. It's just another big body target for him. And they really didn't pick up anyone significant in the draft. Like the competition there, actually, I take that back. They got Deontay Johnson now. So Deontay Johnson is going to be, significant for targets for Bryce Young. But I do think that Jatavian Sanders might end up being, depending on how Adam Thielen is aging, Jatavian could end up being, like the second target on the team. But, it remains to be seen just based on, what we know right now in the current makeup of the depth chart. But that, that's kind of what I was thinking. But Spread, you also liked where Brock Bowers landed. I wasn't too big of a fan of it, but I thought it was like in the mid tier of landing spots. I would have preferred to see him land, like somewhere, like the Jets or somewhere with the established quarterback. But we're looking at Gardner Minshew as the quarterback of the Raiders this year, and coming into a new offense and everything like that. But what are your thoughts here? And they also picked Michael Mayer last year, who was one of those tight ends that was projected to have kind of like a decent rookie season, but they didn't use him at all. So what are your thoughts here on the tight end situation in Las Vegas?
Yeah, well, first of all, Bowers is probably the best tight end prospect we've seen since Kellen Winslow Jr. I haven't seen a guy like this in forever. I'm so excited that the Raiders got him. I was someone I wasn't even considering as a possibility at 13. I didn't think there was any way he would get out of the top 10. The fact that Kyle Pitts went higher than him when you look at the college tape is absolutely crazy to me. But maybe Kyle Pitts' lack of success and lack of ability to turn that franchise around is one of the reasons he dropped so low. So I know people are concerned. But first of all, I do think that Minshew is serviceable. And I think in this offense, it's going to be – I don't really think that Tua is that elite a player. And my idea is if you throw him on Carolina, I don't think the Panthers are that much better, right? But we do know what he can do. And that's operate in a good offense with the weapons and do what his coach shows you and do what the thing is trying up. I think Minshew is going to be exactly the same. And with Devontae Adams, and the other thing is people are saying, well, they already have Mayer. Well, okay. Here's this fun one that I like to tell the Raiders, my Raiders fans friends that didn't like the pick. Let's go a fantasy world, right? An alternate universe, Simon, where Aaron Hernandez is a family man and he has a wife and 2 kids and he goes home every night after work, right? It's not doing all that crazy stuff. We know the NFL is a copycat league. Everybody would have been running 2 tight end systems, because if that didn't happen and you ran Hernandez and Gronk for all those years, Brady it would have been fantastic for them. So I'm not against 2 tight end sets, especially in the new NFL, where we see that these linebackers are getting smaller because now coverage matters. When I grew up, a linebacker wasn't really expected to cover too often. They were run stoppers. That's not the case anymore, so we can't take advantage of that. Secondly, I would think that Bowers is going to play a Kincaid-like slot position more than he's going to be lining up and blocking every time. So in those 2 tight end sets, if we think of him as a third wide receiver or the slot wide receiver with Devontae and Jacoby Myers, that's a pretty good number 3 for teams to have to handle. And who are you going to match up against them? A corner's too small and a linebacker's too slow. And I think that this offense is being underlooked, but we get the fact that we don't play outdoors a lot, right? You're going to be fast. You're going to be indoors, and you're going to be playing against some other teams. I think it's an absolutely fantastic spot. And the fact that people are down on him for this landing spot or thinking that Mayer's going to lose targets because of it. Now, if you want to downgrade Mayer a bit, that's fine. I can understand. I've seen a lot of people that had Mayer in dynasty leagues that are really disappointed with this draft pick, and I can understand that. But I actually think that it'll help both men because as that Brady offense showed, you can run effective 2 tight end sets in this NFL. And I think the only reason we didn't see it more is because Aaron Hernandez went off the deep end and kind of ruined that experiment. But you need talented guys to do it. And I think they have it. So I absolutely love the pick. And he's someone that I'm going to be targeting because you can get a Raiders stack. You know, you only spend the high pick on Adams, but the rest of the guys you're going to be able to get a little later in the draft. I think he's going to be fantastic. And boy, I'll be really disappointed if I'm wrong on this take because I haven't been this excited for a Raiders draft pick in years.
Yeah, I don't blame you for being excited. And like you said, he was projected to be a top 10 pick. So the Raiders must have been super excited to see him fall there, which makes sense that they would draft him, even though they had Mayer already. And the 2 tight end system, that makes a lot of sense too, because Belichick was trying to recreate that 2 tight end system like up until a few years ago, and he just couldn't do it. He just didn't have the same talent to work with. But Mayer could be like a Hernandez to Bowers Gronk or Gronk or something like that. So yeah, I think that does make a lot of sense if you put it that way. And on top of that, he has not really done anything as far as ADP. He's still in about that same range where he's falling as the tight end 9 off the board at Underdog ADP of 82. So if you believe in Bowers like Spread does, then I think that sounds like a pretty good value on him. And like you said, he's got Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, is he back on the team Spread?
Yep. So yeah, most likely a lot of times you're going to see him split out wide at almost in the slot, and I think he's going to be uncoverable. I think you're going to see a lot of him on 3rd and 7s, and I think those 7-yard throws are going to turn into 30, 35-yard gains. So I expect a lot from Bowers this year, and I'm happy that he's tight end 9 because I think that he can end up being tight end 2 or tight end 3 by the end of this season. And he's a player I'm definitely targeting regardless of stacks.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see a lot of this stuff, what happens in training camp and the preseason when we start to get an idea of how these guys are gelling with their teammates and everything and the quarterback in particular. So yeah, Bowers, definitely an exciting pick there. And if you're a Raiders fan, you got to be happy because like a lot of times they will blow these first round picks when they're picking these offensive players. So, I mean, that's a good pickup for the Raiders there.
Exactly.
All right. So Spread, let's go into a draft here, and then we'll talk about some of the mid landing spots and the bad landing spots that we observed from the draft. Just wanted to cover those top landing spots at the top there. So if we're looking at the draft, let's dive in here, Spread. Let me call it up and we'll do it on the count of 3. In the meantime, make sure to hit like on the video, guys. We're looking for 20 likes to unlock, like a shorter video with the second team that I'm going to be kind of previewing. We got the Atlanta Falcons coming up here soon. And then, maybe the Chargers or maybe the Bears or something like that. Throw in suggestions there in the comments if there's a team that you want to see. And also subscribe to the channel because I'm looking for about 600 subscribers, hopefully by the end of the month. Let's see. So if we go into drafts here. All right, Spread. I'm ready when you are.
I'm ready. Just count it down and I'll hit enter.
All right, let's go. 3, 2, 1, enter. So we'll get an idea too here of how quickly these drafts are filling up. So while we're waiting on this draft, Spread, is there anything that you want to tell the viewers about?
No, I'm just excited to be here, and I think this is going to be a fun season. I can't believe I'm drafting in April. I told some of my friends of that, and they go, "You're sick," and I go, "That's how it goes."
Yeah,
that's how it goes here, and I think that more people than ever are doing this, and I guess my only concern is these might be some of the sharpest rooms I'm drafting in, right?
Yeah.
Because who does this unless they're really good? You have to
Spread.
really be committed to be drafting best ball this week.
Well, the best time that I found to do it is, like super late at night. Like if you're going, like if you're on the West Coast, then you can get away with drafting a little bit like earlier. But I found that like some of the best draft rooms I've been in have been when it's like midnight Central Time. So if you're on the West Coast,
you got me fired up. I'm going to knock one out tonight around 11 p.m. my time.
10 o'clock. 10 o'clock.
Did you enter already? Because I entered.
Yeah, I entered too. I got 3 more.
Okay, cool.
It says 3 more to start.
Okay, cool. It just said enter on the screen you're sharing. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, no. Yeah, that's my my desktop. So I got to change that. Actually, let me get out of here.
Okay, great. No
Thanks
worries.
for reminding me. So yeah, Spread the situation with the content that you're writing. Are you still doing NBA playoff content right now?
Yeah, I actually I wrote one up today. Actually, it was for next season. The one I wrote today was Ben Simmons props, which was a kind of funny assignment for my editor, but I had a lot of fun with that one. And what will I be? Oh, and tomorrow I'll be doing, it'll be published on Friday, but I'll be doing previews for Roland Garros and just general handicapping tips. That why the French Open is different than handicapping other tournaments and what you should be looking for, because it's kind of a spoiler here, Simon, but on the clay, it can be a lot different. And a lot of bettors like to back the big names. But I think in this one, it's surface dependent. And I want to sort all my results for clay court only. And I want to use those numbers to go ahead and project my draw. So I'll be working on that as well. Just follow me at Spread Astaire. Where did you? I'm number 2 here, Simon.
You got a great spot. Yeah.
Wow. How lucky am I, Simon? Did you see this?
Well, that's great. Yep. It's exactly what we were talking about earlier.
How did he take CeeDee Lamb over Christian McCaffrey?
Yeah.
You got to be kidding me. I have Tyreek Hill above CeeDee Lamb.
I do too, honestly.
Why is CeeDee Lamb moving up so high?
Just because, like last year's performance, he was getting a boatload of targets, and Dak has kind of proven at this point that, he's a decent quarterback year after year. He's able to support a high volume wide receiver. And I think that CeeDee Lamb just being his favorite target on top of all that just set him up nicely. I'm going to go with Breece Hall here. Like, this goes back to what Spread and I were talking about at the top of the show, about how there's very few of these running backs that you can rely on to have the type of workloads that we're going to see out of Christian McCaffrey and Breece Hall. So Spread and I both stick with the theme of this show. We draft those early running backs, and we'll see who falls to us in the second round here. But yes, yeah, Spread.
I was surprised that Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson were ranked so high at my original time going through here.
Yeah.
But then after doing a couple drafts and seeing how barren these running backs get by round 5 or round 6, it makes perfect sense to me. And you're going to have to take a swing. Now, to be fair, right, if you were just playing it safe, I do think that Justin Jefferson is a safer pick than Breece Hall. I wouldn't be surprised if Justin Jefferson has more fantasy points by the end of the year. But what we're looking at is the opportunity cost and the idea that you can get say maybe a guy playing with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison in the late rounds, who I would be comfortable with. I don't know if I'm comfortable with Ty Chandler, right? Or Alexander Madison, right? Who ended up on the Raiders, right? But my point is, the way that the running back is this year, you're going to have to kind of make some, I would say it's a risky pick to take him so high.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
I think so too. Like, but I do, the thing that I do like about Justin Jefferson is we saw last year when you had these backup quarterbacks come in, he was still able to put up numbers. He ended up getting hurt during one part of the season, and it took him out of several games. But Jefferson showed that he's able to kind of adjust to a quarterback situation like that. But still, like Breece Hall is a guy that I think has big time breakout potential. We saw him get hurt last year or the prior year in his rookie season, and he was coming back from that ACL throughout the season last year. Like we see it happen all the time with these running backs when they come back from an ACL injury and they're not able to put up their normal performances. But now he's 2 years removed from that injury. And even with that injury last year, he showed a ton of upside in the passing game. And, now he finds Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. And on top of all the rushing upside that he has, I just think that offense is going to open up a lot more this year. And I think that Breece Hall is going to be set up. And I think he justifies that, that high draft pick this season.
All right, you're going to be up in one pick at 19. Who are you looking at here? I can't believe Kyren Williams is still on the board.
Yeah, I am. I'm looking at. I think I'm going to go with Olave.
If I were you, I would take Williams. This is unbelievable to me. Why is he dropping so much? He was like 12 when I did this 2 days ago.
To me, like I want to make sure that I'm getting a wide receiver here.
Okay.
And I do like Olave this season. I think he's in a good spot. With me, with Kyren Williams, I just think that there's a little bit of. I think the reservation with Kyren Williams is just they added Blake Corum to the backfield, who's a similar running back. We know that he's going to get a lot of usage in that backfield, but he's coming off of a huge usage year. And the question is going to be, is he going to be able to, kind of maintain that? Now, I think that, he definitely could, but I just don't have him ranked, that highly to draft him ahead of guys like Olave or some of these alpha wide receivers that I think that you need to have in your lineup. If he fell to me in the third round, then we'd be talking about a different story, right? Like if it was like, maybe the first pick of the third round or something like that, then to me, that's a no-brainer. But when I'm sitting here with already picking a running back, and then I got, like a few, potential elite wide receivers on the board, I'm going to go with one of those guys, I think.
And here's why I'm higher on Williams than most other people. I think if you look at the draft, and I think that one of the things, I know that we love McVay and Shanahan for these great schemes that get people open, but the heart of that Shanahan system has still been establish the run. And I think when you saw with their draft picks, they look to beef up their line on both sides of the ball. But when I see those big offensive linemen ending up there and in Los Angeles, it says to me, this is going to be a team that recommits. Remember their breakout year? They ran Todd Gurley into the ground. Right. So I could see another situation like that with Kyren Williams, where they're going to run him into the ground and they'll get rid of him after the 5th year. Now you're on the clock here. You got Hall and Olave. Who are you looking at?
Let's see. I'm looking at Devontae Smith. I'm looking at DJ Moore. Man,
7 seconds.
I'm gonna go with Moore because if I can get myself a Chicago stack there, I think I want to go for that. I probably could have taken Hurts there, and Smith might have fallen to me, but this is early on in the draft. process, and I'm still getting a feel for where guys are falling. So it's really like Spread and I are just getting our legs underneath us with these drafts right now. So I'm trying to think in advance with the Bears and liking that offense, but like if it costs me an opportunity to stack these Eagles, because I really like the Eagles situation too, then that's gonna hurt. But no pun intended.
Here, let me jump on a couple of things you said.
Yeah.
I actually think that Hurts is too high right now, because I think with Kelsey gone, he's not going to get the rushing touchdowns, which is why I'm so high on Saquon Barkley this year, because I think you're going to see a more traditional offense there. And Hurts has gotten beat up over the last couple of years, and he hasn't been healthy going into the postseason. And I don't see how a team can look at that and say, hey, maybe we should stop running him into 300-pound guys where they all get their hits, right? Because you always see a linebacker flying in at the end of the play, even though the first down's already been got, right? Just the bangs and bruises. And even if he doesn't hit the pile, it's still a little car crash that you're dealing with. I think that you're going to see much less rushing touchdowns from Hurts this year. So I'm fine kind of staying away from him there. I kind of like where you went. Talking about what I drafted there in the second round, Simon, I went for Deebo Samuel. I don't know how much I like that, but I just am thinking back to how many games last season did the 49ers win easily? How many games did they just come out and put up between 30 to 45 points and just run away with it? So that's why I went Deebo number 2. I went with Jacobs at number 3. Now I have I feel a sense of relief when I grab that second running back, Simon, because I feel so much pressure to take care of those spots early because of how slim it is, and you're really like taking chances. And I feel, for example, we talked about a guy earlier, the running back in Arizona, the rookie. I want to take a shot on him, but I don't want to be relying on him, right? If he ends up not getting a lot of usage and Connor has another great year and he's just not ready, I don't want that to sink my team. Now, with the 2 strong running backs I already have, I would feel much more safe making that play. So you're 2 spots away. You have 1 running back. You have 2 wide receivers. Who are you looking at here? For the running backs, I would be looking at Etienne and Cook.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. And I'm going to draft him right now because I want to shore up those running backs. And he's another elite running back going in the 4th round. And that, Etienne's probably about as close as you can get to those guys that we talked about that are going in the 1st round, like as far as having the backfield, majority locked up. I don't know why Etienne's going in the 4th round, but I will gladly take him in the 4th round there. Let me look at the depth chart and see what kind of things that Jacksonville did here in the offseason that might hurt his value.
Well, I'm going to try and get a quick stack here. Now, I just grabbed Mahomes. We talked about him. We think he's going to have a better statistical year with the extra weapons. My question for you is, how much should I worry about Rashee Rice missing the beginning of the year?
I am a little bit worried about it. I do think that he's likely to miss a few games. I mean, look at Henry Ruggs with the auto accident that he had a few years ago. That is still fresh on the minds probably of whoever's going to issue the judgment against him, like as far as an NFL suspension. So, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him miss like 4 games. Like, what do you think, Spread?
I was hoping for 2, and I just made the pick, so I'm hoping for 2. I would say the thing that he's got going in his favor, not a lot of people were hurt, right? It's not like there's no fatalities involved or anything. So, that was definitely a gamble here. But that's what we're doing here early in the season, right, Simon? We've already talked about we're going to get some of the best drafters in the game by drafting it, it's 12:15 my time here, right? So we don't have any drunk people making mistakes, and you don't enter the draft this early in the year unless you're really committed to this. For that reason, I want to take risks, and I see that you continued for a little Jacksonville love there. and I built the Jacksonville stack last time, and I absolutely loved it. So I'm happy that you're going to be able to get involved in there, and I think you're going to be able to get Trevor fairly easily. When I'm looking at my next pick, now you'll pick before me here coming up, but I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. I've got my quarterback taken care of. I have 2 receivers already. I definitely have my running backs taken care of. I feel like I can go best available player, which is a nice spot to be in. So.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're shaping up pretty nicely. I don't hate the Rashee Rice pick, by the way. I do think that there's a lot of question there. I just think, based on the recency of the Henry Ruggs situation, it could impact the suspension. We don't know when that suspension is going to be handed down. It could be handed down like mid-season or something. Like a lot of times these things take a while to process.
That would not be good for me. I'm hoping to just miss the first couple weeks and have him really up and flying there by the time the playoffs start. And I want him to really carry me. Oh, boy, I see this guy's going for KC here because I had Worthy queued.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to get him.
Okay. Yeah, it was looking like he'd fall to you.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of a pivot here.
That guy took him super early too. It seems like he took him.
Which is weird with me having Mahomes and Rice. It's weird that he went for the kind of Kansas City mini stab of Pacheco and Worthy. I can't hate it altogether, but it's just kind of a weird correlation without the quarterback.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Oh, and someone took Thomas from you, which was someone I thought that you'd be able to grab there with Kirk.
Yeah, that's all right. Like, I don't have any exposure to Thomas yet, so that would have been a good opportunity to. If I'm looking at the board right now, I kind of like. I think I'm gonna go with Deontay Johnson. Like, I know the Panthers suck, but like I just think that Johnson's just gonna get peppered with targets. We're probably gonna see what we saw with Adam Thielen last year. Spread. By the way, Spread with the amazing Captain Thielen call early on in the season last year. We did a showdown show, and Spread, like, nobody was talking about Thielen. Like, everybody was like had him like on the on the back of the truck to the scrap heap. And then Thielen ended up having a huge breakout in the beginning of the season last year. And the day that Spread called him on our showdown show, he ended up going off and just having like an amazing game. And he was super low owned in that captain spot. But yeah, what do you think on your next pick here, Spread?
Oh, I'm so happy. Look as I continue to grab these 49ers and Chiefs here. So now I've got Mahomes, McCaffrey, Debo, and added in George Kittle. I'm feeling pretty happy about my correlation. I've pretty much locked myself into a Brock Purdy here as my second QB, and I'm fine with that. I am fine with that. So I see Purdy's ADPs around 101, so I got to keep an eye on that. Oh, I'm up right now. Hold on. Boy, I can just grab anybody I want here. I think I'm going to continue to be strong at running back, and I'm going to grab Montgomery.
I like that. Yeah, it's coming up on me. I am looking right now at Evan Ingram. He's got an ADP of 74, and my pick is going to be 78. That would help me get this stack going a little bit more and, set me up for a good position. If you believe in the Jags like Spread and I do, I think that the situation with the Jags this year, I think getting rid of Ridley is actually going to benefit them, because I think there was a lot of sync issues, and now they go back to more their comfortable offense with Christian Kirk and
both Ridley and the Jaguars are going to look better. That was a bad fit. They were running him as a number 1. He needs to be a number 3. Now he goes to Tennessee, assuming Levis can get him the ball. You run Hopkins in that number 1 position, and now you get Ridley where he really excelled, and that was playing off of a strong number 1 in the slot. and getting those underneath routes, I think both players will look better. And I think you're going to be pretty happy about it. If you go Evan Ingram here, he was quietly one of the most consistent players last year. And I think we overlooked it because he didn't spike. So he didn't spike into those DFS optimals that often. But from a best ball or even a managed league fantasy perspective, it felt like he just put up between 8 to 14 points every week. You could just count on him. And I really think, I like it. The Jaguars is a team that I really like to make a stand on. Sometimes I think when we overhype these teams, it always happens a year after the hype, right? Where last year the Jaguars were supposed to take over. I heard people betting them to win the AFC, and now they didn't meet expectations, so everyone's going to move away from them. I think this might be the time for this team to shine. So I like where you're going here.
Yeah, I feel like I got a pretty good lock or read on a couple stacks going. I like the Chicago stack is going to shape up here. Hopefully I'll be able to get Williams with my next pick and get my quarterback there. And then Jacksonville, obviously, I've been drafting several of their players. DeAndre Swift still on the board as well, but I don't think I'm going to chance it with Williams falling to me on my next pick. So I'm going to go with Williams on my next go around here, and just hope that there's not a quarterback run before that where he gets taken off the board, because he's going to be cutting it a little bit close.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna have to grab Purdy with my next batch of picks here, because I'm still 11 away. So I'll be to 98 and like 102, and his ADP is 101. So I'm gonna grab Purdy next. Hopefully no one is watching this. Oh wait, we're pre-recorded. We're not live.
We're safe.
I was doing live NBA drafts, and like this guy kept sniping me, and I go, "Is he watching the show?"
Yeah, that's the worst.
For the best ball in the playoffs. I said, this guy keeps taking everyone I want.
Yeah, that's what I like about doing these pre-recorded. You don't have to worry about that crap.
And what pisses me off about that is when they snipe me and it's not correlated.
Exactly. That's the worst.
I can kind of understand, like this one guy, okay, he went in on the Chiefs, right? He took a couple of the Chiefs players I was targeting. I didn't think I was going to Pacheco anyways. I kind of thought that maybe I'd done that a little different. Maybe pass on Jacobs, try and get Pacheco for a little more correlation. But at least he's somewhat correlated there, right? When you're just sniping me at random and your whole team looks like just a managed fantasy league and none of the players correlated, it really frustrates me. All right, so you've got 2 running backs and 4 wide receivers, and you're up in 4 picks.
Yeah, and Williams is still there for me. I think Jordan Love would get picked before him, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's just hoping that there isn't a mini run on quarterbacks right here, but we'll see how that falls to me. I did notice that Ladd McConkey is already off the board. The last draft I did too, he fell off the board really early too. So it is
his ADP is going to fly.
That
he's going to
seems
fly.
To be exactly. Yep. His ADP
he's going to be in the
not
50s or 60s
reality right
August.
now because right. Yeah. So, be careful if you want to draft Ladd McConkey. Make sure you're grabbing him a little bit early, because he has not made it to 90 on any of these ones that I've seen. All right, grabbing Caleb Williams here. So, first quarterback in the 8th round. I don't hate that. Last year, there's a popular way to go is drafting those elite quarterbacks early on in the draft, but to be able to draft a quarterback in the 9th round, it's reminiscent to me of the year that Lamar Jackson was going to be starting the full year. He was going in around the 9th, 10th round, and he ended up, people were kind of writing him off, didn't think he was that good of a quarterback, whatever. And he ended up just exploding that year and got probably about 50% of my teams, 30 to 50% of my teams to advance, because I was drafting the hell out of him. I had a ton of exposure to Lamar Jackson, and it paid off big. And that's, probably the most in I've been on a player, seeing him going in those like 10th, 11th rounds, whatever it was that year. So Caleb Williams, I probably will try to get a bunch of exposure to him. Hopefully, in the 8th to 10th rounds, depending on, like where his value shakes out and, like the correlation that I have on my teams. Let's see. So it looks like Spread. Did we lose your camera or did we lose you altogether there? All right. So we may have lost Spread. So I'm going to look at my next pick here. I got Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence as quarterbacks there. Zach Moss on Cincinnati. I like Zach Moss and I like Javonte Williams. Zach Moss has the competition with Chase Brown as the quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals, but I think I'm going to go with, you know what? I'm going to go with Javonte Williams because Javonte did not get hurt by the draft either. Let me take a look at him real quick. The depth chart for the Broncos, I see Williams and P. Ryan, just like last year. So there's really, and Jaleel McLaughlin, but I think he had didn't he have like an injury last year Spread with McLaughlin? Did he tear his ACL?
Yeah.
Okay. So McLaughlin.
I don't know about ACL, but I know he was hurt and missed a lot of time.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I do like Williams. He's another guy that was coming off of ACL tear last year, I believe. And so he really didn't do too much last year, but he's set up to have a decent year this year, especially with Sean Payton, running that team. I do think that Williams will find like plenty of opportunity. All right. So Spread, I believe we're coming up. Are we coming up on your pick next or mine?
No, I got a while. I'm kind of looking at, I'm still 12 picks away. You have another pick before me. Just wanted to shout out though. I mean, I might as well draft Brock Lesnar with my last pick because I got Brock Purdy and then Brock Bowers. We got to get every Brock on the board here, Simon. But I talked to him about how high I am earlier on him. And this is kind of a cool secondary stack that I can grab. Jacoby Myers might be available next time I'm drafting. A little bit of correlation there. I wouldn't mind having Minshew as a third quarterback. Like I said, I think he could be in a Tua role where he's in just a great system that elevates his skill set, makes him look a lot better than he really is. And for my third QB, I'm kind of fine on that. Now, to be fair, I've used a lot of draft capital already on quarterback. So I'm not going to force that one. But Myers is someone that I actually do like a lot here this year, and I do enjoy the correlation there with Bowers. As you can see, the way I've drafted, I already have 2 QBs, 2 tight ends, 3 running backs. I need to make a run on wide receivers. But this is why I've gone with the strategy, just pulling up the wide receiver board. Look at all the great options I have left for guys that can spike in and out of the lineup, right? Hopefully Debo is going to get there for me a lot. I can use my flex on other positions here. But I really like all these options. Jahan Dotson was the guy that I loved last year in the 6th or 7th round. I'm getting him in the 13th round in potentially a better situation. Ricky Purcell, I'm definitely going to be targeting him. I've heard people not like the draft pick. I absolutely love it. I think he's going to be able to get open in that scheme. And the fact that he's going to be so far down on the depth chart, could lead for a lot of opportunities for him here.
I
like getting sniped already as my queue is almost dead. If I didn't already have 3 running backs, Simon, how do we not like grabbing Nick Chubb this late? The guy was picked last year. What are the arguments against him?
I just think, he had a pretty devastating knee injury. And I think, typically with these guys coming off these knee injuries, the following year, they really, really just don't perform. And it doesn't matter how elite the guy is. Like they usually just, unless it's Adrian Peterson, they're just, they kind of fall off big time the following year. But 2 years out, they do, they start to come back a little bit. But if I'm drafting and I need a running back right now, then I'm looking at Nick Chubb. Yeah.
All right.
I also like I like Gus Edwards here too, because he's got very little competition. I don't think J.K. Dobbins is going to make a difference. So Gus Edwards, theoretically, he's got that backfield to himself pretty much, because I don't think J.K. Dobbins is going to make much of an impact coming off that Achilles tear. Devin Singletary is in a good spot in New York because we know that they like to run the ball, and I don't think that he has a lot of competition in the backfield either.
Now, I overdrafted my last 2 receivers, but I felt that I put myself in a position to do that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Because who are the players I left on the board? Singletary, yeah, you're right. He does have a good opportunity. Singletary, we're going to give him the James Conner Usage Award of the Year. Where he's not really that good a player, but he's going to be a great fantasy option just because of the usage.
Right.
I can see why people like him. Love Tyjae Spears here.
Yep.
I just felt like I needed to address a wide receiver, and I felt that I've done so good on this draft so far that I can afford to reach in order to have a balanced team. And a lot of my teams that I didn't advance, and we talk about this, Simon, looking at mistakes that we made, I did go BPA too much last year. And I'm looking at some of the, and I think I critiqued you a little bit on one of the drafts you sent me, where the wide receiver is so stacked and we can only get so many of those guys in the lineup every week. I'm going to be balanced this year. And if it means passing on the best player available a couple times, and you got Trevor, you have to be happy about that, because there's nothing worse than building the full stack and then missing out on the QB, right?
Yeah.
Who I think is just such the crucial portion of all these stacks here. But going back to this year, I'm prioritizing balance over best player available. And I think that's one of the things that's going to help my advance rate last year, because it just sucked when I was looking last year and I was so strong at every position, and then I just had 2 bum running backs. Or no tight end at all, because I picked 4 right at the end and they didn't do a lot for me, right? It was Darren Waller and a bunch of bums, and Waller ended up being the biggest bum of all of them.
Spread. It's funny that you say that, because the popular way to draft these is to go with multiple bums at a position and go stacked on the wide receiver position in particular. Like, balance is not trendy, and like if you go balance on your teams, you can be setting yourself up for, especially this year with what we've been noticing with these running backs, you're setting yourself up to have some success if your macro trend hits, especially if the makeup of all your teams, it doesn't matter who's on your teams. It matters about the makeup of your teams. If you got your correlation going and you got your macro strategy, if you wanted to go balance, and if balance hits, then you're set up nicely to advance with your advance rates and have a nice, diverse set of teams going into that next round, because diversity of your teams is going to be huge. With trying to get you want to try to get at least one team to that best ball final, because if you do that, then you basically make all your money back. And if you have a decent amount of teams advancing past the first round, then you just get to pile that on top of like the team that you advanced to the final. So you can just keep stacking up winnings and winnings and winnings if you do this right. And I think that like a huge thing that you want to focus on is a macro plan when you're doing these drafts. And Spread said it perfectly with balance. Balance is a good way to go. It's not trendy, and people love just grabbing as many wide receivers as they can without thinking about the rest of their team.
Yeah, and other people might have had different problems. Of course, we're all looking at how we drafted and what we think we can improve on. There could be some other people that were too balanced last year and they left the best player available on the board. And for that reason, they weren't able to advance because they just didn't have enough talent or enough high performers, even if they did have a balanced build. So a lot of this is really just critiquing yourself. Same thing I do in betting. Where am I making issues this year? I know for this year, one of my problems in the NBA, my totals were absolutely terrible. And I was not able to adjust to the way that the differences were called in the games. And I wasn't able to statistically account for it. And I needed to figure out something better as a way to do that. But you need to constantly be judging, as well as scouting these players. Go back, look at your old drafts, look who advanced, right? And if it's something like I drafted Nick Chubb in the first round, right? I mean, that's a tough one to really critique because that was really bad luck. I know that when we did these shows last year, we really loved him as a player. We thought he was going to have great opportunity, and we thought the Browns had a chance for a breakout season. So I'm not going to get down on myself for picking a guy who has a devastating injury. Now I got to ask some questions here, Simon. I'm still looking at wide receiver, but I see a lot of interesting options if I want to get different. One of them is Jalen Wright, who has a chance to be like A-Chain was last year. Between Cooks and Leggett, who do you like? I think I like Leggett.
Leggett, like just because they traded up to get him. So, I think that I don't even know if Cooks is on desk right now. I think he's still is he a free agent? Like, I'm not really sure what his situation is right now. So he might not even end up on the team.
All right. Well, I was able to get both players we talked about.
Yeah.
2 rookies to add to my a team that I really already like. And I think that this is really why I like going with running backs early this year, because I have the luxury of picking a player like Jalen Wright. And if he duds, I'm not dead. Let's just say he duds out. Let's just say he can't get the carries behind Mostert and A-Chain, however you pronounce his name. I've heard so many different ways to pronounce it, right? I'm okay here. But look at the upside I have. Mostert's never been Mr. Reliable as far as it comes to health. Right?
Right.
So I think I'll be able to spike above a couple of these guys here or there, especially because McCaffrey, I know he was healthy last year, right? But it's tough to see these guys being the top pick here and there. So I really like the opportunity that one gave me. Same with Leggett here. I grabbed Shaheed. So I have players who I think are going to get there. Still, I'm looking at wide receivers. That's where I really want to focus here because I feel like I'm really strong at every other position. Right. Wide receiver is going to be where I'm going to need to hit on these late round picks. And I told you, Simon, after my first run throughs, I felt really strong through these first 10 rounds. Now is where I feel like I need to do some more research. I need to familiarize myself and who are going to be these sleepers here that we're drafting. I will be at pick 166 next. This could make or break my team, right? If I can get a contributor here, a guy that will spike into my lineup or that I can count on if one of these big dogs that I've drafted gets hurt, who is that player going to be? And boy, you talk about really rolling the dice. I feel like you're doing that with most of these players from here on out. So I might be relying on you here for some advice to try and find some of these sleepers, because more than other years, I feel like the ADP has accurately reflected the rookies.
Right.
I think that before people underestimated the rookies because we didn't know what we were going to get. But I think that now everybody knows hitting on those rookie picks, you could get a top 20 guy at pick 60. And I think that they're being properly drafted now, whereas before I felt like they were undervalued.
Yeah, there was a lot of hype on the rookie draft class for wide receivers. Mm-hmm. So if I'm scanning through here, like the guys like Luke McCaffrey, I think is interesting, just his pedigree, but also he ended up on Washington. But I mean, that's like an 18th round pick. Adam Thielen is interesting again. Like he's still on the board for us at 166. 166 is his ADP though, so that's kind of fits where his ADP is. Michael Wilson, what is he, a second-year player? Like he didn't do too much last year, but he's in a situation with Marvin Harrison on the opposite side of the field. Maybe he gets all the attention, and Michael Wilson gets opened up a little bit. They lost, obviously, Marquise Brown, so Michael Wilson is interesting as a second-year breakout candidate. Jalen Polk is a guy that I've heard some talk about. He ended up in New England. New England really doesn't have any competition. Let me look at the depth chart of New England real quick here.
Well,
he's a guy that I think
you're 551, so I don't know who you're looking at.
Polk's competition is Kendall Bourne and Demario Davis. So I'm going to go with
Okay,
Polk
you
there.
grabbed it. Okay, cool. I just
Yeah.
didn't want you to miss the pick while you're looking stuff up.
Yeah, that's one of those moments where, like I'll just take a chance, take a swing on a wide receiver because I really don't like him.
And I got sniped here.
Oh, what happened? Who were you
I was going to
going
take
for?
Thielen.
Oh,
I already
Thielen.
knew he had the rapport, right? I already knew
Yeah.
he had the rapport with the guy.
Right.
And we're getting him so late. I just felt that was a safer pick. So I definitely don't want another quarterback. I'll probably try and grab Minshew with my last pick. And if I miss him, I'm not really too worried about it.
Go ahead.
Jermaine Burton. Well, he just went off the board. But what do you know about Jermaine Burton?
I don't really know anything about him. I didn't really hear about him until, maybe right before the draft. Like, where did he end up?
He's in Cincinnati.
Cincinnati? I mean, so if he's in Cincinnati, is he a wide receiver?
Yeah.
Yeah, if he's a wide receiver in Cincinnati, I automatically don't like him. Just because they have a bunch of options in those receivers. So, he's got Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd never finds his way into that offense just because they got the target competition with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. So Jermaine Burton ends up as the wide receiver 3 there. It looks like is Boyd off the team? I don't see him on the depth chart. Maybe they lost him in free agency. I'm not sure what happened to Tyler Boyd, but Jermaine Burton comes in and fills that role, I guess. But
Tyler Boyd ended up in Pittsburgh. Why do I want to think that he ended up in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really see like the alert on him, but they
Did
got
someone already pick him. I'm scrolling down. I don't see him.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Traylon Burks here. He's a guy that I like, and I do think that he. He's been unlucky with injuries so far, but he's one of those guys that came out, obviously drafted in the first round a couple years ago. They're not going to give up on him that easy. He's got a lot of competition with Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins, obviously, but if those guys are getting a lot of the attention and Traylon Burks is able to establish himself as the slot guy, we've seen him, have flashes in the past, so he's got potential. But it's like Spread said, everyone that you're picking in these rounds is a crapshoot. So you're just basically trying to catch guys that could have opportunity. You want
Tyler Lockett at pick 112 is crazy to me.
Oh, pick 112.
Isn't that wild to you?
Yeah,
they drafted Curtis Samuel and Cortland Sutton ahead of him.
Yeah.
Jameson Williams ahead of Tyler Lockett.
He's one of those dudes that every year, like, he gets underestimated. Like he's underestimated every freaking year. And
who? I got to get ready here. I got another pick coming up.
You got Michael Mayer still on the board there, Spread.
Yeah, I was thinking, how does that work? And you know what? I had that same issue when I drafted Kyron Williams, and I wanted Blake Corum.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? I know that we don't handcuff as much in best ball.
Yeah, I think that's overrated in telling people not to handcuff. I don't mind handcuffing. Like, I understand the philosophy behind not handcuffing, but I just think that's a outdated rule. And I even grabbed both Zeke and Rico Dowdle, like in that Dallas backfield, because I know that's backfield's going to get a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And I know that Zeke is probably there's uncertainty there. I don't know which one of those guys is going to claim the backfield. So I grabbed both of them, and I'm getting them both after the 10th round. So with Dallas running backs, I don't hate that strategy with taking both Zeke and Dowdle.
Tyler Boyd is still in Cincinnati, and his ADP right now is 202.
Let's see. He's 202.
How is he 202 and he's projected to be 71? How's Will Shipley 204 and he's projected to be 44.5? How are they doing these projections?
I just ignore the projection because it's usually like I'm usually thinking the same way that you're thinking. I'm like, where the hell did that come from? Let's see.
Mike Gesicki is projected to be 30th.
I'm gonna grab Dortch here. Greg Dortch. He's one of those guys, Spread, that I like taking in the later rounds.
Okay.
If you're looking for a guy, because he's got that same situation with Michael Wilson. It's only basically Harrison is the only target there. So on top of the tight end, so you got two guys who are going to get the majority of the targets. But we've seen it with Greg Dortch. Every opportunity that he's gotten, he's excelled. And when he comes into the game, people underestimate him. I don't know if he's got a boring name, and that's why people keep underestimating him. But like every time he comes into the game, he ends up having decent performances. And I think that this year he's set up to do reasonable well, especially if Harrison is going to get all the attention in that offense. I'm looking for a tight end with my next pick because I only have one tight end right now, and I want to make sure that I'm going to try for like 3 tight ends on every team, but it really depends on how that falls to me because I want to have 3 quarterbacks too. So I'm either going to have 3 quarterbacks or 3 tight ends on every team. I think, Spread.
I'm having 3 quarterbacks and 3 tight ends on every team.
Yeah, makes sense. I see a lot of
the best part about going heavy on tight end, especially like I did, where I invested a lot of capital early, is they can go to my flex.
Yep.
So when I draft a tight end above a wide receiver, I talked about this earlier. Bowers being a slot receiver, I feel like I just got an extra wide receiver here. So you're gonna look and it says 257. I almost feel like it's 282. As far as my quarterback. Wide receiver tight end ratio. But the cool part is, if Kittle has a bad game, I can slot him in there. That flex, I think, makes it a lot of fun to go ahead and get the 3rd tight end here. My 3rd tight end was Isaiah Likely. It's a complete crapshoot. But with Mark Andrews getting older, he might end up in my lineup a couple weeks. So I think I have 1 pick left? Yeah, I have 1 pick left. And I'm probably going to grab Minshew there unless he's taken. I picked Sky Moore right towards the end here. But, I mean, at that point, I was just trying to correlate.
Yeah.
Because I have Mahomes and Rice Smith at the beginning of the year. And, I'm trying to get Minshew here. But look at the options, even if I don't. Derek Carr still on the board.
Mm-hmm.
He's fine as the number 3 QB. He's going to have some big games. They play in a dome and they still have a good offense.
Yeah. I like him this year.
Daniel Jones was a guy I was really high on last year, and we talked about it earlier. One of the biggest, I'd say, flaws in the fantasy system is how overpowered running is to a quarterback's performance, and Daniel Jones is going to give you that. He knows the season's on the line. There's no reason to play it safe here, right? There's no reason to make business decisions. He's going to have to run and get those first downs, or he's going to be run out of town. Bo Nix, we didn't get to talk about this, and I see your list, and I'm thinking we need to do another draft soon, and we'll go over those. But that was going to be another point of contention for me, is you put him in a middle landing spot. I think the Bo Nix is in a great landing spot. He's got an excellent head coach. I think the weapons are fine there. I think he's a really talented kid. I think that it's a great landing spot for him. He's got an opportunity to come in. He'll start right away, and he has one of the best offensive coaches developing him. And if Sean Payton's all in on him, you got to think he's good, right? I mean, we can say what we want about Sean Payton, but he's got an eye for the offensive side of the ball. And if he has the traits that Payton wants, I think that's going to be translating to success. And this is Payton's going to be first time with the guy that he wanted. Back there. I know that Russ was kind of forced upon him, and that wasn't the style of player he wants. Nix is the style of player that he wants. So you're coming up on your last – how many – this will be your last pick coming up, right? Who are you looking at here as kind of the I mean, this is the fun pick, Simon, right? This is where you can scroll all the way down, right? You're just throwing something. And I almost like scrolling all the way down because you're going to get a guy that potentially no one else has.
Right. Like I'm looking at Greg Dulcich here because I want to get that third tight end.
Mhm.
And I think that Dulcich, if he's healthy this year, like last year he was hurt throughout the entire season, but we saw the flashes of him in his rookie year, and then he got hurt. He missed almost basically all of last season. And so here we come into his third year, and he was, let me grab him real quick. He was one of those guys that was getting super hyped up, and he came in and he delivered in his first game with Russell Wilson. And things were looking like he was going to be a great pick, and then he just got hurt, and he we haven't really heard much from him because he's been injured for the most of his career. But I don't mind taking a shot at him if I need tight end help in those super late rounds.
Yeah, I mean, just look at all the people you can scroll down for. Some other guys that I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on with the very last pick. I mean, we're talking about your last pick here, right? Kadarius Toney.
Yep.
It's my last pick. If he hits my lineup twice, I'm fine with it.
See, yeah, like with Toney, if I was going for a wide receiver right now, I'd be looking at probably, let's see. I like Jalen Hyatt. I think Jalen Hyatt showed some upside. I think with Jalen Hyatt too over Toney is you get a little bit more security because he's not like a head case like Toney. You don't know if another team's going to take a chance on Toney. He's obviously got the the athletic upside and everything, but he is shown now in New York and Kansas City that he's a huge gamble. But like Jalen Hyatt, a guy who showed like a bunch of flashes last year. They got Odunze in there now, or not Odunze. They got Malik Neighbors in there now, so they got like a weapon in the wide receivers to take attention from these other guys because last year Jalen Hyatt was basically the only guy to zero in on. There was nobody, Darius Slayton. Beyond that, I don't think there was really anyone else to try to target. So I kind of like Jalen Hyatt as a breakout candidate this year. And there's a bunch of guys. If you're going, I just got out of my draft, so I can't really give any. Give me some more names there, Spread, if you can see anyone else.
I like all the Chiefs receivers. I'm trying to look through and go back to our draft right now.
Yeah.
Simon, I liked my first draft. I love this draft today.
Yeah.
Wow. How excited I am to get stacks correlated to our two Super Bowl teams from last year.
Go ahead and break that down, Spread. Who'd you end up with?
I'm trying to figure out. So how do I do it from here? Drafts completed.
Are you on your desktop?
I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, quarterback, I crushed. I got the two Super Bowl quarterbacks, Mahomes and Purdy. Absolutely loving that. And then the flyer on Minshew. For the running backs, this is probably, I mean, I had the McCaffrey correlation. This is my least correlated. I'm absolutely fine with that. I grabbed Christian McCaffrey in the third round. I grabbed Josh Jacobs. I mean, is there a player who was more built for his free agent destination than Josh Jacobs going to the Green Bay Packers? Their team's going to grab a lead and they're going to put it to him, and you're going to be trying to tackle him in November, and it's going to be 17 degrees. That's going to be one of the most painful experiences of those linebackers' life. I love Jacobs there. David Montgomery's another one that I know that we love. Jahmyr Gibbs. It's the same situation. I don't understand why they're not going to run the two backfield deal. I think Gibbs should be a little lower. I think Montgomery should be a little higher, just like last year. Now, will he fade towards the end of the season as Gibbs takes more and more of a role? Maybe, but that's the luxury of grabbing him as my third running back. And if McCaffrey or Jacobs misses a couple games or has slow games beginning of the season, he's going to get there for me. And then my two complete flyers that, of course, are based on potential injuries. But Jalen Wright and Keaton Mitchell are my last two picks. We know that Derrick Henry's in Baltimore, and if he is healthy, and I don't want to say he's not going to be, but these are two guys that I think will have great opportunities if the guy ahead of them goes away from that. Wide receivers, now this is where, hey, maybe I should have gone a little more balanced, because I think that I'm really going to need one of these guys to hit here on my 3, 4, 5 picks, because I took Debo and Rashee Rice, which sounds great, but if Rice misses some games, I could dig myself into a hole. In that case, I'm going to need Rashid Shaheed, Ricky Pearsall, or Xavier Leggett to really be able to carry me. But I think by the end of the season, having Samuel and Rice is going to be a fantastic opportunity for me to be really strong when we're looking at those playoff weeks. And then, of course, I talked about tight end and how I have no problem having my tight end or my running back jumping into my flex position. And with George Kittle and Brock Bowers there, I think I have an excellent chance of them both being in my lineups every single week. So hopefully that will help mitigate my lack of wide receiver. My biggest, if I were to critique myself, I probably should have gone wide receiver round 3 instead of Jacobs, and then grab Pacheco round 4 with a higher wide receiver than Rashee Rice. So that would be my biggest critique, and something that I'll look at. Maybe I'm a little too high on getting these running backs early here, and maybe I need one more stud wide receiver. But overall, Simon, I just loaded up with players that I just watched in the Super Bowl. I'm very happy about this draft.
Yeah, I like that. And I ended up, as far as my quarterbacks, I ended up with Caleb Williams and Trevor Lawrence. I had stacks going for both those guys. I would have liked to have more Chicago stacked there. But Trevor Lawrence, I got the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they're a value, and I got them stacked up pretty good. I got Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, and then I got the duo of Zeke and Rico Dowdle as the Dallas running backs that I was talking about earlier. So I end up with a pretty decent running back squad. I don't know about my wide receivers as much. I got Chris Olave, I got DJ Moore, Christian Kirk, Deontay Johnson, Gabe Davis, Jalen Polk, Treylon Burks, and Greg Dortch. Burks, it's a complete crapshoot, but he could end up paying off this year.
Simon, let me jump in there. For a managed league, your wide receivers would be a nightmare. But for best ball, I'm loving your wide receivers, as you just have a ton of guys that are going to spike in and out of the lineup, and you're going to be fine. For example, on my roster build, if Debo tears his ACL week 1, this draft that I'm absolutely in love with, we're breaking up, right? I mean, the relationship's over. I really think that you have great diversity here, and I think that you're going to see a lot of these guys hit your lineup every week, but they're all going to be with really high scores, and I think it's going to be a competitive wide receiver field. Keep going. I just wanted to point out that I am a little jealous of the diversity you got here, and you're going to be able to absorb an injury. If Deontay Johnson goes down, or Gabe Davis goes down, you're fine. Whereas me, I'm really praying that my top 2 guys either don't get suspended for too long and stay healthy.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's good perspective on it, Spread. I'm looking at it now, and I see like Deontay Johnson, he's going to be the number 1 target in Carolina. He's probably going to get peppered with targets. We got Gabe Davis. Obviously, he's shown upside, and he ends up on Jacksonville. He's probably going to be a better fit with Trevor Lawrence.
I mean, Gabe Davis to me is the ultimate best ball player.
Yeah,
he spiked into your lineup 4 weeks. He's the worst managed league guy, and he's the best ball guy. Just let him spike into your lineup, and don't worry when he only gets 2 targets and is out there just getting some running cardio in.
Yeah, for sure. And then tight ends, we got Evan Ingram, Tucker Kraft, and Greg Dulcich. We saw Tucker Kraft's upside when who's the other running back on
Luke Musgrave?
Yeah, when Musgrave went out, we saw Kraft come through, and then towards for the rest of the season, they kind of split on and off at tight end. So he carved a spot out for himself in that offense. He's going to have a ton of target competition, so that's why I wasn't comfortable having him as my fallback number 2. He's a guy. He's a best ball guy that could come in and out, like Spread was talking about earlier, of your lineup throughout the season. And then Greg Dulcich, if he ends up hitting and he ends up being healthy this year, like he was a guy that was talked up like Trey. What's the tight end for the Cardinals?
Trey McBride.
Trey McBride, that's right. Like he was kind of talked up in those same, in the same breath as Trey McBride before, like they were drafted. So I mean, like there's potential there with Dulcich, and it looked like he was going to be a breakout. Like in that rookie season of his, he was hurt for most of that season. Then he came in towards the end. He had that breakout game with Dulcich, and I know that because it was a showdown game, and then he had a couple other like flashes, and then he got hurt again. And then last year he was hurt throughout like the season basically. So gonna go back to the well on Dulcich and see what happens this year. I'm probably not going to have a ton of exposure to him, but in the situation I was in, it made sense to draft him, like for comparing the other tight ends that were around him and knowing that I needed that third tight end. So that's why I went there. And yeah, other than that, hey, Spread, I just want to go through real quick. Let's just like name these names of the guys. We don't have to go into like analysis, but I just want to give the people a idea of bad landing spots. I had, and you tell me if you disagree with any of these, Spread. Rome Odunze.
Agree.
He ended up, where'd he end up? On Chicago. So he's going to have all that target competition. He's in a good spot in real football, bad spot for fantasy. Drake May ends up on New England, which is, like we saw Mac Jones in New England last year. It's not necessarily the coaching thing there right now. It's because they don't want to spend any money on their weapons, and they don't have any weapons for the guy. Malik Neighbors, he ends up on the Giants. I don't think that's a good spot, like just because it's a good spot for opportunity. It's a bad spot for your quarterback situation. Because
I agree with you on the first two, but I think we've seen here more that targets matter more than talent or anything.
Yeah.
And if he's getting double-digit targets per game, no matter who's throwing him, I think he'll do his ADP. Complete agreement on the first two. I think Neighbors might be a sneaky good pick here.
Yeah.
Just because I think the target share is going to be really high. And I think there's an argument that he's the best receiver in this draft. And this is one of the best draft classes ever. So that talent and the target usage, I disagree.
Yeah, I do think, I'm not going to take anything away from his talent. I'm just concerned with the actual landing spot. Would have much rather seen him like end up on the Chargers or something like that, who had an opportunity to take him, but they went with Alt instead.
And I think they're going to be happy with that.
Yeah,
I think
so too, yeah.
Herbert's going to get so much time. He's going to make these non-elite receivers look good because if I have 5 seconds to get open instead of 3, I'm going to look like a much better receiver.
Right. Yeah. And he ends up with Lad McConkey anyway. So he ended up with a weapon regardless. But Neighbors, for Neighbors' sake, I would have rather seen him end up, somewhere else. But like Spread said, there's plenty of opportunity that's going to be there. Michael Penix.
Not to mention they're going to be playing from behind a lot too. That's not a good defense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. So they probably, I'm probably
target share, prevent defense. Yeah, hey, I'm talking myself into them. Can we go back and redraft?
Okay. Let's go back in that draft, Spread. I gotta go. I gotta go put him up my board a little bit. Michael Penix, come on.
I like how you put everyone's team, and his team is LOL because it's not that he's a bad player.
No,
I'm so disappointed for him because this is, and you can hear this on any podcast, so I'll keep it quick. It's a misallocation of resources. Every team has the same amount of resources. You gave $100 million and then the number 8 pick. It's a disservice to both men. If you were really all in on Cousins, you grab Byron Murphy, a big D tackle, another offensive lineman there, and you help him out. If you're really all in on Penix, you use that $100 million. And I'm so glad that the Falcons are idiots because they could have grabbed Christian Wilkins from us and completely revamped that defensive line. It's a misallocation of resources, and I feel really bad for both men involved. I feel really bad for the fans of Atlanta, who I know are good fans, even though they get kind of – it's tough to support a team like that year after year. So Michael Penix, LOL, yeah, just terrible.
Yeah, same sentiments as you. It's just like if you knew that you wanted Penix when you drafted Cousins, right? You had him. The talks coming out that he was number 2 on their quarterback board, so they knew that they wanted Penix. They had the spot to get him. They could have allocated that money towards, like weapons for the guy. Like anything. Yeah,
I would have shored up the line. I would have got for $100 million.
Yeah,
you can get Christian Wilkins. You could have got 2 offensive linemen,
right?
3 maybe. I mean, it's just unbelievable misdirection of resources there by the Atlanta Falcons.
This was coming from a front office that was mocking Belichick, basically, just like bragging about how he wasn't even a top, 3 or top 10 option for them or something. Like just saying that is ridiculous. Now, like it goes from Atlanta seemed like a lock to win the division to now it's just like, is the management like even competent? Like we were blaming what's his face Arthur Smith last year, but it's like it seems like it's just they're just a mess all around. So yeah, that's very questionable there.
John Middlecoff, great NFL scout, has a podcast on the Volume Now. Brought up a great point that I didn't even think about. Cousins coming off an ACL, which means all these guys who are young and they're going to feel Penix is one of my guys, my generation. They're going to listen to the same music. They grew up on their phones, blah, blah, blah. He's going to be out there spinning to them all OTAs. What's going to happen when he develops a rapport with them and then Cousins comes in, and if he's not 100% right off the bat, is that locker room going to divide with all the young guys, Bijan, Kyle, Drake going, hey, give us a guy our age. We don't need the 36-year-old corny guy with the 13-year-old daughter telling us what to do. We want to roll with this guy. We're only doing what every other NFL podcast has done. And hey, I got nothing against the Falcons. Hopefully we're proven wrong. And this ends up being a Jalen Hurts or a Jordan Love move that works out okay that we mocked at the time. But I'm really skeptical of that franchise. Really a tough one.
Yeah, you definitely gotta raise your eyebrows at that one. I had Bowers in a bad landing spot. Spread kind of sold me on him as a good landing spot. We went over him a little bit earlier. And Blake Corum on the Rams, I considered that a bad landing spot just because he's got to compete with Kyron. And, he could have landed in a much better spot where he would have gotten a bigger piece of that backfield. But what are your thoughts there, Spread?
I completely agree. Blake Corum had the opportunity, if he got drafted to a different team, to be the number 1 back. In fact, like, for example, my favorite team, the Raiders, that I've already spent enough time talking about, I think he could have beaten out Zamir White. He could have been the number 1 running back in Dallas. There's plenty of teams he could have gone to and got a majority of the target share. We watched Kyron Williams be one of the most dynamic backs in the league this year. I talked about drafting him in the last one with my 2nd round pick. That's how high I am here. And I think Corum's a great player that's going to get kind of lost in the shuffle behind an even greater player. So yeah, bad landing spot from a fantasy perspective. Maybe a good fantasy spot because he won't get completely beat up in his first year. And maybe they're going to try and target share. Maybe they're not doing the Todd Gurley thing over and over again. Right. But I'll wait till I see it. Right now, I think that Kyron's going to get a majority of the carries, and Corum's going to be relegated to change of pace or backup duties. I think we're still going to see a Kyron heavy workload for him. So, can't be high on Blake Corum this year. Maybe stash him in a dynasty. I don't know.
Yeah. I think with the same thing with Corum, like we've seen it with Gurley and guys like that in the past. They like to run those guys heavy, but they like to also stick with one running back in those backfields. And so, when Kyron Williams, if he gets hurt, then we're going to see Corum have an opportunity. Most likely, they're the same type of running style with those running backs, so it's unlikely that like maybe they're going to split the workload between them. But who knows? Maybe they change things up this year. But yeah, make sure to hit the like button on the video. Looking for 20 likes to trigger that second team video. And then on top of that, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out Spread with all his content at Spread Astaire over on X. And, subscribe to the X channel of Heat Seeker Sports as well. And then subscribe at Pumacom while you're over there. Spread, any final words?
No, I'm looking forward to doing another one with you, Simon, because I got to get some of these other stacks. I think you got me sold on a Denver stack. Give me some Bo Nix, some Greg Dulcich. This is a great secondary stack.
Yeah, I do like I know I said that Bo Nix was a mid spot, or where did I have him? Yeah, I had him
You
in
had
the
him in middle.
spot.
I think it's a great spot.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like the Peyton argument and everything like that, I changed my position on that. I'm with you. I think Bo Nix landed in a good spot. Although from a fantasy perspective, I probably would not, draft him. Or if I do draft him, he'd be like a QB3
He's
or
the number
something.
3.
But,
He's like where you grabbed my Minshew today. But just talk about this from a fantasy perspective. Where would have been a better landing spot?
I think he landed in a good spart from a fantasy perspective, probably about as good as you can
I can't
get,
think of a
apart
better
from Chicago.
situation.
Apart from obviously Chicago, but the
I
problem is,
almost would argue that Denver's a better spot. I know Chicago's got those great weapons, but the O-line is still bad. And are we sure about the coaching there? Who's the OC there in Chicago right now?
Right.
I'm getting a Hall of Famer teaching me here.
Well, I mean, that's true. Like the coaching is definite edge over in Denver. Spread and I put a lot of value in coaching, by the way. Spread and I, we play that into a huge role into our, decision making and stuff when we're looking at players and teams. But I do think with Bo Nix, does he have the athletic capabilities? Is he like a running quarterback? Is he more of a pocket passer? Like what kind of quarterback is he, Spread? Like what are we looking at here?
If things go well, because obviously this is boom or bust here. If things go well, I would say Russ before the injuries. He's not going to be a guy that's going to get you a lot of yards on the ground, but he's mobile enough to move around in the pocket and make plays. And I would expect Peyton to run kind of some of the similar bootlegs that they had last year for Russ. And I think Nix will run them more effectively. And then the rest will just be in the pocket, making the right read. He can get through his progressions quickly. I think Peyton's going to absolutely love it. It's going to be – I don't think Russ got through his progressions nearly as quickly as Peyton would have liked. And he was spoiled because he was coming from Drew Brees, who was probably one of the fastest processors we've ever seen, up there with Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and Joe Montana, with just being able to see the field before the snap. So hopefully Bo Nix is going to show that type of ability. Hopefully not for me as a Raiders fan, but for Broncos fans, right? He's going to show that right off the bat. I'm higher on Bo Nix than most.
Yeah, and I will say this, like with Sean Payton being more of an old school coach, old school mentality, a former quarterback himself, don't you think that he would want to ease Bo Nix into this offense and give more, preference to the running game? Like, because I think like if Javonte Williams, comes into this season with Bo Nix as the quarterback and they're trying to protect Bo Nix and ease him in, there's no pressure on the team. Like give Kyron Williams the work. I mean, not Kyron Williams, Javonte Williams the workload. Javonte Williams is a huge value if that's the case.
You can't argue with that at all. And so you're kind of getting me even more excited for these Denver stacks because where's Javonte going?
He was going. I think I got him in like
8?
10th, 11th round. Like I got him super late. So yeah, cool. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll put out another show here shortly, probably after the schedule release. So keep an eye out for that. And then, make sure not to go overboard with your drafting just yet. Wait for those schedules to come out because your teams could look like crap after the schedule comes out and you end up with a bunch of needs on the same bye week. So be cautious with that. Use the promo code SEEK, SEEK, when signing up for an Underdog account. Get that money in now and draft when the schedule comes out, and then we'll draft with you. And until next time, thanks, guys.